everyone. I'd like to call this council meeting to order. This evening we have Favia Gonzalez with us, and she is going to sing our national anthem for us, and I would invite everyone to stand who are able.
Oh, Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love in all thy sons command. With glowing hearts we see thee rise, the true North, strong and free. From far and wide, O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. Et ta valeur, deux fois trempée, protégera nos foyers et nos droits. Oh, Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
Thank you very much, Favia. Well done. It's been moved by Councillor Ioannidis that the minutes of the regular meeting held December the 9th, 2013, and the special meetings held December 9th, 12th, and 18th as mailed to the Mayor and Councillors be accepted. All in favour? Opposed? That's carried. We have one presentation this evening. Paul Picard, manager of the Auditorium and Arenas. Paul.
Good evening. On November 5th to the 10th, the Capital One Road to the Roar curling event was hosted by the City of Kitchener, the Granite, and Westmount curling clubs. We had 24 teams in total, 12 women's, 12 men's. Provinces represented were 10 teams from Ontario, 6 teams from Alberta, and 2 each from Manitoba, BC, and Saskatchewan, and 1 team each from Quebec and Newfoundland participating. We had a total of 29,617 tickets sold for the event. We had 200 dedicated curling volunteer enthusiasts that lived under the mantra during the event, great curling, great volunteers. We had an excellent leadership team from the committee chairs, and most importantly, we had an inspired, engaged executive team that shared a vision and planned accordingly. At this time, I'd like to just show a clip, please.
It's been an amazing week right here at the Road to the Roar. An event like this does not happen without a team of extraordinary volunteers. And there is a good representation of the group here tonight. And actually, I'd like to ask them all stand up. They're in sections number 16 and 17. All the volunteers stand up. Hello, great volunteers. You guys rock. I'd like to pay tribute to each and every one of you right now. Thank you very much, volunteers. An event like this just does not happen without people like you dedicating a lot of time.
Needless to say, it was a great week, and at this time, I'd like to call upon Mayor Zaire, Bill Ioannidis, and Frank Etherington. In appreciation and recognition of the world-class experience the executive team, the volunteers provided, the community, the spectators, and the athletes, we would like to present to each member of the executive committee that's here tonight a keepsake for their shared vision and planning in hosting the 2013 Capital One Road to the Roar. First is the chair, Cynthia Roth. Jerry Finnan. Greg King. And Fred Lehman. Due to the inclement weather, we've had some others that were unable to attend, but I would like to mention Leslie Gallagher, who was just a tremendous event manager and kept everything together. Audrey Cook, Sherry Helmka, Barb Sutherland, Bill Simpson, Sharon Lindner, and Paul Fleming. At this time, I'd like to invite Doug Surich, the president of the KW Granite Club, and acting on behalf of Paul Ross, the president of Westmount Curling Club, Mr. Jerry Finnan. Okay, or Cynthia. That's it. Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Paul, and all of your staff as well. I heard nothing but great things when I was down at the auditorium and around the community in terms of the service and the welcome that you gave to everyone from across this country. And so it was great to have all of your involvement with it. To the volunteers, that was a great scene. I think Jerry and Marge were the most excited in there and the most active, and that was great to see. So thank you again for the effort that you put into it. I know how much of an effort that can be because I've been involved with events like this before myself, and it's greatly appreciated by all of the community. Thank you. So later this evening, we will be, as one of the bylaws, we will be approving the procedural changes that we have made to our committee meetings and council. And so I would, even though we haven't formally approved the bylaw, I'd like to work through this evening as if the bylaw has been passed. And in terms of the time frames that we have, I will need to keep reminding myself about that. For delegations, when you have 5 minutes to make your presentation, and when you have 30 seconds left in that time frame, the clerk will ring a bell, and we would ask you to wrap up in that period of time of your presentation if you haven't already done so. So we'll move on to the first delegation. That's David Kresge, and this is related to Clause 5 of the Community and Infrastructure Services Committee report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. Yes, so I'm here on behalf of residents of Glasgow Street to support the Community and Infrastructure Services Committee decision to take the north side sidewalk out of the reconstruction plan for Glasgow Street for 2014. We appreciate the committee's decision. Along with the decision on the sidewalk, there was also questions about water pressure and saving trees. And we understand now from information from staff that the water pressure really has nothing to do with the new construction, so that concern is taken care of. And that the trees, the people that had concerns about the trees accept the fact that the trees will be cut down, but that new trees will be planted. So our feeling on Glasgow Street is that all the issues have been addressed that were taken up at committee. But I would like to speak to one thing which surrounds this whole issue, and that is the pedestrian charter. One of the members of the committee suggested that the charter should have been reviewed some time ago and that it should be reviewed before more conflicts arise. And I want to mention this because in the staff report there was a whole list of streets that in the next few years are slated to be sidewalked, as it were. And two of the streets I will use as an example. One is called Marina Road and one is called Duchess Street. And I grew up on those streets, so I have an intimate knowledge, and it sets out the problem with the charter as it now stands. Marina Road, quite a long street, ends at a dead end. It has two houses facing onto the street. It has no sidewalk. But staff will put into effect installing sidewalk on that street because of the charter. Probably at a cost, it's a long street, at $100,000, $150,000. There are two houses that front on the street. The rest of the street backs onto a townhouse complex, completely fenced, and the opposite side of the street is the rear driveways of 7 or 8 houses that actually front onto a different street. So two people face on the street, and needless to say, at this point in time, there's maybe 15 cars, that travel up and down that street. Duchess Street, where my mom lives, actually runs off of Marina Road. There's 13 houses on Duchess Street. There's no sidewalk. And it's a little street that runs between two other streets. So the amount of traffic on that street and Marina Road combined you might get 100 car trips in a day if you were lucky. And so I point this out as something that's overlooked in the charter, and that staff will go ahead and put sidewalks on these streets, and you'll never know about it because it's part of the pedestrian charter. But at an expenditure approaching $200,000 for, under 20 houses, and for streets that have zero traffic, we're talking zero. We used to play baseball on the street anytime we wanted. So, as the committee member suggested, I think you need to look at this and see if there maybe should be a better approval process installed in the charter. Another committee member suggested that, as with the traffic calming procedures, staff has to solicit the street residents, and you need a 50% response and a 60% approval of certain actions that involve traffic calming. And that might be something to consider in a case of the charter, because as I say, on my mom's street, 13 houses. It's a lot of money to spend for people who say, we've never had a problem walking on the street. Marina Road, long street, with two houses facing onto the street. For two people, you're going to put in a sidewalk. It just seems like that and there's 30 streets on this list from the staff, many of which are around the St. Mary's Hospital area. Perhaps some of these people will definitely want a sidewalk, and perhaps others could say to you, there's never been a need, and don't spend the money. So I just bring that to you, as was suggested at committee time, that really you should look at this and consider that you could save a lot of money that is needed in other places in the city. So again, thank you on behalf of Glasgow Street residents. We support the decision of the committee. Thank you.
Thank you. There's at least one question for you, Mr. Kresge. Councillor Linetsky.
Yeah, thank you very much for coming in. Actually, I don't have any questions for Mr. Kresge. I think his presentation was fine. I do have comments to make on that as well.
We're at questions at this point in time. Any questions? Okay, seeing none. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Now we our procedure is that we will not have any comment or a debate on it until the motion is brought forward. So, Councillor Ioannidis. Is this Community Services? Community Services. Can you bring forward item number 5? Okay.
Please excuse me while I...
Yellow sheets, item number 5.
Okay, and with our new rules, we don't have to read them anymore, right? Correct? So,
Yes.
okay, then I'll put forward.
I think just in this particular case, when we're dealing with the full report, I would suggest when there are delegations in the room and that we would read the essence of the motion.
I'll read the motion. That notwithstanding the policies and guidelines governing the construction of new sidewalks, a sidewalk shall not be installed on the north side of Glasgow Street. From Westmount Road to Nell Drive and further, that staff be directed to report back to the January 27th, 2014 council meeting with information on the region of Waterloo Zone 4 water pressure issues, as well as the cost and timing implications of redesigning the Glasgow Street reconstruction project to accommodate the following. Maintain the existing length of the eastbound left turn lane at the intersection of Glasgow Street and Westmount Road, providing a lane width of 3 meters as opposed to the proposed 3.3 meters, and a road realignment options to preserve area trees.
It's moved by yourself and seconded by?
By Councillor Frank Etherington.
Okay, Councillor Etherington. Now, discussion. Councillor Inetsky. 5 minutes.
Right, thank you very much. I appreciate where we are at right now. I want to thank the residents for their indulgence and persistence in terms of where they were coming from. I also want to thank staff in terms of working with us and making their presentations over the last 2 or plus years on this reconstruction issue. The last 2 weeks I have worked with the residents. I've also talked with staff, both regionally and at the city, on these different issues. And as a result of a little better education and knowledge of where each item is and its implication, we've come to the conclusion that the sidewalk will be deleted, and it's all agreed upon. And with other issues dealing with the intersection turns and the widths of the road and the preservation of the trees, the residents have agreed that to make things feasible and workable for this year, it'd be best to let this go by at this point in time. So that works out quite well. I do also want to mention that the comments from Mr. Kresge in terms of his presentation for Marina Road and the sidewalks on the charter. Marina Road is not even practically, not a road. Technically it is, but it functions more like a lane because it has garages and backing onto it and that nature, but still classified as a road. And the 2 houses basically are on something that's, I'd say, be 20 feet in width, maybe 30 at the most. So it really is undersized as a city street. So I'm not sure how you're going to put a sidewalk in on there anyway. So that's just a comment I want to make dealing with Marina Road in terms of Mr. Kresge's comments. But other than that, I think we've come a long way, and we've come to a conclusion that is quite satisfactory to staff as well as to the residents in the area. And this project will proceed this year with staffs working on it with a tendering, etc.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Gazzola.
I just want to make sure that this resolution that we're passing ties in with the recommendations that are coming from staff.
Yes, it does.
They do, okay. The other, I did want to make a comment on the...
Well, it's not what staff, I wasn't at that part of the meeting, so it's not what staff had recommended, but it's what was decided by the committee 2 weeks ago. Yeah. So it's different than what the staff had recommended.
What they originally brought forward, but in their report that they brought back that's contained in here, it ties into what's in there, right? Yeah.
Okay,
I just wanna make sure
okay,
that-
that's a fair point, because I wasn't here for that discussion, and that's why I'm a little blank on it. Councillor Yanetsky, you wanted to comment on that?
Yes, thank you. The recommendation that was mentioned by the councillor for the committee report number 5 that he outlined and moved is actually different from the one that we have in our staff report that's attached to your package in the agenda, which is the INS 14012, and it has the recommendation that council approve the cross-section alignment of Glasgow Street from Westmount to Nell as described in scenario 1. And the scenario 1 within the report basically is go as is without the sidewalk.
You're referring to the committee agenda, not the council agenda, correct?
The committee agenda, that's attached to the council report.
Okay.
But then there's a separate report attached to our package this evening.
Correct.
It's a new report,
Yes.
It's a new report.
and that's what we're,
It's one and the, yes. So, okay, I'm with you now.
And that's
So it's
what you
one and the
want.
same.
yeah.
I looked to staff, Ms. Houston, what the motion does is implement the revised report that you have.
That's correct, because what we're doing is maintaining the original design, save and except for the sidewalk on the north side.
Yeah. Correct.
Yep.
Okay, so I think we're clear. Does that answer your question, Councillor Gazzola?
yeah, that's, you want to make sure that everybody's in line with that, okay? Because it is different from what they originally brought forward, okay?
Right.
So that's fine. That was I do want to make a comment on this whole question of our pedestrian charter. A similar issue like this arose, I don't know how many years ago. It was around Rockaway Gardens or something, where a street
Floral Crescent, I think.
Yeah, wanted an exemption the same as this. There were actually 2 streets at the time that we dealt with, and at that time, I was of the understanding that staff were going to revisit the whole pedestrian charter and and bring a report back to a future council about this whole issue, because there are a number of places where common sense states, I think, that there should be exemptions. So my question or comment is, where does that stand? Are we still looking for something like that, or are we happy with the pedestrian charter as it now stands?
Ms. Houston?
Thank you, Mayor Zaire. I can't speak specifically to the pedestrian charter, but I know that staff have on their work plan to review the sidewalk infill policy this year, and that will be coming back to you to address the criteria.
Okay, that's the point. If they do that, then they have to delve into the pedestrian charter also. Okay, that's all I wanted to, so that's coming back. Fine.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Fernandez.
Actually, I was going on the same line as Councillor Gazzola. So do you need to have a formal direction from council that not only in reviewing the infill sidewalks, that part and parcel to that you review the pedestrian charter so that it has a more common sense approach? Notwithstanding that we are trying to make our city more walkable, there are definitely areas where sidewalks are not warranted or are contrary to the landscape of that particular street. So do you need a report?
My suggestion would be that the report come back on the criteria of the infill, and then we see how that may affect the pedestrian charter, and then that it may, in fact, need to change. But some of the principles within the pedestrian charter may still be valid. I don't know the answer to that. Okay. Rather than having them do both at this point in time, let's wait and do it in lockstep, or pardon me, sequentially.
Okay. I mean, I just didn't want to have staff be directed to do one thing and then have to go back and revisit the pedestrian charter. But if you think that this is more prudent use of staff time, then we'll leave it as such.
And I think, as Councillor Gazzola said, that when they're doing this, they will be considering what is in the pedestrian charter.
Great.
And if there's a relationship, I'm sure they will bring that forward.
Great. Thank you.
Councillor Rabanovich.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. And I, too, will be supporting the recommendation that's before us. And I'm glad that we're going to be looking at the pedestrian charter. But I think one thing that's important, that if we are going to go down the path of looking at it, is that we have a comprehensive analysis of it. If I think back in the past, I mean, that would include involving the Environmental Committee as an example, as well as our Grand River Accessibility Advisory Committee. I know that folks who have certain disabilities and have mobility challenges, a sidewalk is extremely important for them, more than for the rest of us. And so I think it's essential that that be considered as part of that process as well. And I know they would want to have some input into that document if it's going to be revised.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Ioannidis.
Yes, I will be definitely supporting the recommendation, but I think we, as a council, we need to be a little more cautious when we're dealing with the pedestrian charter. I don't think we should be jumping the gun a little bit here just because of one street. I think it needs to be looked at holistically, and I do echo some of the comments that Councillor Urbanich has mentioned.
Councillor Singh.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I will support the motion as well. But I do like the approach that before we revisit the pedestrian charter, that we do have a comprehensive approach, and similar to Councillor Vrivanovich's suggestion, and I do support that as well, that we do need to hear from advisory committees that are made up of citizens, that we get the appropriate feedback from them as well before we make any necessary change. And he outlined a few, and I would recommend that Safe and Healthy be one of them as well.
I see no further speakers. I would just simply add that something to remember when we're putting in sidewalks, not just where we're infilling, but existing sidewalks as well. It's not just about those people having a sidewalk in front of their own property or not. It's about the entire neighborhood and people walking or in a wheelchair or whatever mobility it is. Using the sidewalk. So it's about all citizens, not just being put into place for those where the sidewalk is specifically located. So I will call a question then. Recorded vote's been called for. No, this is for number 5. Yes, that incorporates that. It incorporates the extra report. That's correct. You can now vote. In a moment. Oh, yes. Okay. For the audience who may be watching electronically and on television, the recorded vote, while we have it on the screen behind, I think it is, yes, behind me and in front of us, it does not appear on on television or on our website. So we have decided to at least try, so that once the result is known there, just for a formality, so that people can see, we would have a standing vote. So those in favor? That is carried unanimously. And I forgot at the beginning of the meeting to go to actually item number 3 on the agenda, which is declaration of any pecuniary interests. Are there any for this evening? Councillor Singh.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, this would be for the Heritage Kitchener component of the committee reports, one of the designated properties, 8-16 Arthur Place. My parents own a property adjoining to that parcel, so close nearby. So based on that, I would have a...
So that's the first interest. Property on the list?
Yes, to that
Okay,
only.
we'll take that separately when we get there.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Now go to the second delegation. That's Stephen Litt.
Good evening, Mayor Zaire and respected city councillors. I'm here on behalf of my organization, Rebel Development Corporation, to support the listing of 46 to 56 College Street as properties of significant heritage interest in the city of Kitchener. Being born and raised in Kitchener. I personally believe that not enough heritage properties in the city are noted of interest. To describe these two properties, they're two U-shaped properties on College Street, just kitty corner to City Hall. I urge you all to take a peek and perhaps when it's not so cold, to meander up College Street between these apartments and the social work school, just to check it out. It's a really neat street. These are 46 apartment units that have, I know parking's been a bit of an issue lately, but zero parking. Meanwhile, I mean, they are downtown, but so just to give you some insight, we've spent significant capital on improving these buildings. They had many structural deficiencies, balcony railings, mold, all kinds of issues. We've spent significant time and energy in restoring these buildings to perhaps what they were previously, and we believe that they're a strong heritage significant building, sort of contributing to the inventory of the city of Kitchener. So we hope that these buildings will stand for another 100 years. They're built in the 30s, and we did some research trying to figure out exactly why they were built, who built them. We don't know. I think heritage staff can comment on that as well. But they are really unique, for sure. And if anyone would like a tour at any point, I'd love to take you. So, thank you.
So, just to be clear, you are speaking in favor of the listing?
Yes.
Okay. We have one question. Councillor Ioannidis.
Thanks, Mr. Litt, for coming in.
No problem.
I do appreciate your perspective on your property and giving your condolences to your approval on that. And my one question to you is: were you able to look at the report that staff has provided us?
I've got it in front of me. Yes.
Okay, so you're totally agreeable with those conditions?
Yes.
Okay, that's great. And I would love to take your offer on visiting your property.
Will do.
Okay, and just for council's attention, there was a separate report as part of information that was in our packages this weekend, and that was the called Property Owner Engagement and the Municipal Heritage Register. The process. Just want to point that out to you as background. Okay, I guess there is one more question. Councillor Singh.
Yes, thank you. And you referenced to that report as well. And as Mr. Litt is before us, I thought I'd take the opportunity to ask him. So the report that the mayor just referred to outlines the property owner engagement before any listing of said property. Just to take your opinion, obviously. You represent an organization that does own quite a bit of real estate in the city. Do you like that approach, that a proactive approach where the property owner is first notified and contacted to give the rationale and to take their input as well, and not to do its standalone decision and just on its own?
No, for sure. I mean, I received a letter. Staff reached out to me. I personally find great interest in old Kitchener architecture, so it was fascinating to hear what staff came up with. But no, I think it's great that the report is built. There's photos. It's documented. Staff spend time looking through Vernon's directory and doing library research to substantiate the reason to their claim. And I think that any prudent landlord or building owner should definitely take great interest in this, because I think that in the long term, I mean, these are great cultural points of interest in our community. So,
good.
Okay. Councillor Gazzola.
Yeah, I don't have any questions of the delegate. I have a question of staff.
Okay, then hold off if you don't mind. Any further questions for the delegation? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
There are, just on this item number 2 under Heritage Committee, just for your information, there are 2 other delegations. Do you want to ask your question now, or do you want to hold off until we've heard all 3 delegations?
Well, it's a simple. I just wanted if staff could give us a summary of the numbers of listings. It's sort of a general question for everybody's information. So it can hold. There's no.
Okay.
It doesn't affect.
Just so they can start to work on that in their minds. Are you referring to the total number?
Yeah, I'd just like to have a summary. If they can wait till the end.
Actually, I think.
Well, I saw some figures there, and I wasn't clear on them.
I think it's in the report, but staff can comment on that. Second last paragraph on the 3rd page. 510 properties.
I read it.
And 106
slow.
today.
I'm not clear.
Okay, I think the answer is there. Okay, The second delegation on the listing is Earl Pauser, Chris Judge, Ali Jamal. Okay.
Good evening, City Council and Mr. Mayor. I'd like to talk on behalf of Chris Judge on this property here on 283 Duke Street, in this building. Mr. Judge had given me a letter that he got it in December, that he missed the one in, I believe, in October 30th. He never received it, the letter. And also the November letter, he got it in December. Because someone put him on the, I guess he has a rental units there, and he left it there, he never got it. So I just got this papers from him, and I want to talk about this building, not in details, just what I see inside and outside. So this letter, he never got it. And as I looked throughout the building, I was in the, this building has about 135,000 square feet. And the basement, I think, is about 28,000 square feet. There were building in stages, this building, many years ago. And the judge also had demolition permit. And one of the part of the building, they took it down. I think on the northwest side, not sure. And they took it down. And this building, I went through the building, and if you want to bring update on Ontario Building Code, it would cost enormous money to bring this building. There are 3-story building. And also, when you go outside, when you see there are windows has to be replaced, and also the architecture outside doesn't even look like to be in heritage. Like, I would advise all of you to take a ride, go around to look at the building, where it's located. There are railway behind it, and it looks like a box. It just doesn't look to be appropriate as a heritage building. I grew up in Kitchener, Waterloo, and I do know many buildings that should be preserved as the heritage buildings. But I think this one here cost a lot of money, and I don't know, I talked to Judge, and he tells me that he doesn't know where the money comes from to renovate the building. He doesn't know at the moment right now. He did renovate parts of the building inside, and I checked it out, they are structural, not safe, and inside throughout the building, and also like the floors are not properly installed, because I'm a builder, I know how it's supposed to be done. And outside, and I think that City Council should make a right decision, I'm not sure tonight or whatever, that we, to be on the same page, all of us here, that this building, I would say, looks like a box outside. It doesn't look like heritage. Looks, there's cuts and pieces. There's one side building one end, and the other one is building with the dock to deliver whatever inside. And there was building in the front. They cut it off. They demolished already. He got the building permit for that. So right now, to be designated as a heritage, I would say it's a big mistake. It's not there. And there's one already, I think, around the corner, designated as a heritage. It's not too far away from there. And this building, I think that City Council should take a look seriously and see how much money needs to be done inside, if it's sufficient, and where the money comes from, we don't know. So this is what I want to say, that we don't have all the details, because this, I came 11 hours. I don't know what all the details here, but maybe in future we'll give to the City Council. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I believe there are some questions, but I just want to double check. The note I have here on the delegation sheet says it's for 283 Duke Street. There's also one on the listing for 286. Are you speaking about both properties?
Yeah, the both properties, yeah.
Okay.
There was one end the other and one this end, yeah.
Just want to be sure that
Yeah,
we understand
my letter
that.
says here 283 Duke Street. That's what I got here.
But there are two
There are two, yes,
properties
yeah.
on the list.
The two, right? Only one? Yes. So it's only one then?
Okay,
Because
only-
there's, the one is painted outside yellow, right?
Okay, so
Yeah, just the one.
283 is the only one. I just
283, yeah, that's the only one we were
Just wanted to
talking
be
about.
clear on that before we go
Yeah,
to the questions. Okay, there are some questions. Councillor Ioannidis.
Thank you for coming in today.
Yes, sir.
I appreciate your concern because I think we don't take enough concerns when it comes to the property owners when we're looking at heritage. My question is, how long have you guys have owned the property for?
I believe, what is it, 8 years? 2004.
2004?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Councillor Singh.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, sir, for your coming before us as a delegation to relay some of the concerns that you have on behalf of the property owner. And you mentioned that there was some issue with notification circulation to them. So does that mean that they didn't have ample time? Or were they able to meet with staff before this meeting to relay
Yes.
some of the concerns that you just mentioned right now? Or?
If the letter would be, if he gets a letter, I'm surprised the city that they don't send registered letters. If these are important issues, they should send a registered letter that this man gets it. He never got it. He puts on one of the boxes there, they rent people, they give him a month later.
No, I agree. They should be
Yeah.
registered. We should ensure that the notice is actually received before, an important
Correct.
decision like
He
this
never-
is made. So,
But Mr. Pauser, Mr. Pauser, that wasn't the councillor's question. You acknowledged that he had received the letter in December. The question was, has he, as Mr. Judge, had an opportunity to talk to staff about it?
thank you,
No.
Mr. Mayor. I was going to reconfirm that.
Sorry.
With city staff here? With
Yes.
city staff, yeah. I think he got in late December, around Christmas time, was it? When did you get the letter?
Can I talk?
Yeah, come here. I don't know when you got the letter because it was in December. Sometimes, yeah.
The letter was received end of December by sitting somebody's desk. It's a multi-tenant building. It did not came to us. It was sitting somewhere else. I just walking for the rent over there. Then I seen this letter sitting on the table. Then I opened one. It was too late already.
So,
It
Mr.
was
Judge, you didn't have an opportunity to
no
speak with staff?
opportunity to do anything.
Okay. So you're just coming before now to indicate your concern as to that? Okay, all right. And from your delegation, it was mentioned that the property has had some demolition in the past. So there are parts of the building that have been demolished?
That's right.
How recent?
Roughly a month and a half back.
Okay. Are there other approvals for demolition for parts of the building, or?
No, that's what the only one we took it.
Okay, all right. Was that a significant part, or?
Yeah, it was significant on the back side of the building, yes,
And what was the rationale for that demolition? Was it due to structural, or?
Well, it was a structural issue, it was not right.
And the reason why I ask is
Yeah,
your
that was
delegation mentioned that the building does have
Yes.
consistent structural issues. So other parts of the building has some similar problems as
Some
well.
similar problem too, yes.
Okay.
It was old building.
Yeah, old building.
Old
yeah.
building.
So obviously, if something is listed and then later part designated, it is the responsibility of the property owner to maintain it into a certain appropriate condition and keep the look of the heritage significant components of that property and of that building. So you're saying it would be a significant, I guess, undue hardship to you if you had to repair some of these outside structures that are in quite disrepair, you're saying at this current, or
Yeah,
could they still be brought back to remediated?
There's
easily?
a lot of work to be done outside the building to bricks are peeling, there are a lot of stuff has to be done outside. Windows are wrecked and needs the new windows, cannot be replaced, those windows.
Okay. Mr. Mayor, I would have questions for staff afterwards, too. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Gazzola.
Thank you.
I have a question, please. You kept talking about the property being designated.
Yes.
Yeah. You're aware that there are two different processes, are you?
There are.
What we're talking about here tonight is listing.
Listing,
Putting it
yes.
Yeah, which is quite different from having a property designated.
We missed 1 and 2 and 3 were number 4 for the listing. Yes, I do realize that.
Okay, so that we're not talking about designating
Yes,
the property.
yeah.
Now, you, and properties are listed for a number of reasons. It's not necessarily the architecture of the building, but there could be a lot of historical facts tied into the buildings, and that's one of why it would be listed. But listing doesn't really deprive you of doing anything or require you to do anything, right?
Yes, but listing stops you to demolish it, right?
It doesn't, I'll let staff speak about it. It doesn't stop you. The difference is that gives the time required to get a permit is a little bit longer than if the property isn't listed.
Yeah.
I know it's from 30 to 60 days, but I'll let staff answer that. So but they are two different processes. Now, as far as this goes tonight, you said you haven't had enough time to look into, would you be happy with having a deferral of these two properties?
Just the one, 283.
Just the one property. Would you be prepared to have the decision on that property deferred to a later time?
Yeah, I wish if I can get deferral, then we can prepare better. It would be better for us and for the city council.
Okay, thank you. I would hope the staff will come down and just explain a couple of things.
Okay, let's continue with the questions.
That's all I have for the delegate. Thank you.
There are two more people, though, with questions. Councillor Fernandez.
Yes, thank you, and thanks for coming in and explaining the concern of your colleague. Now that you have a better understanding about the difference between being listed and being designated, you do understand that this is not about having to make repairs. This is more about whether you're able to demolish the building or not. Is that clear?
That's clear.
And is that clear to the gentleman who owns the property?
Yeah. Chris, this is clear.
Because I think that's really important.
Yeah, it's.
Mr. Judge.
What happened is this building here. Are you concerned not to fixing up, but you're concerned because if they listed not to demolish it, or you want to demolish it?
I don't know whether we want to demolish at this time, but I want to keep the building if I could, and but to take a decision to list on the heritage, it will won't support us to do anything, in the future.
He scares if he goes to list it, then it leads to register as a heritage building. Then he got problems.
And it does not look like
and
it.
That's what the problem is.
But we're not at that point.
Yeah, we're not at that point. And I think
Yes.
what's important is what Councillor Gazzola had suggested, that if we defer this to another meeting, and you will have the opportunity to speak with staff to have a better understanding about what this means. Would that resolve your concerns at this time?
Yes, at this time, yes.
Okay, all right. Then I think that maybe that's something we'll talk about with staff. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Singh?
I just queued myself for staff.
Okay.
To question staff after.
All right. Okay, those are the only questions for you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Councillor Gazzola has asked a question in terms of the time that the demolition required. Can you give us the number of days on that?
Through your Mayor's Air, Councillor Gazzola was correct. Right now, under the building code, depending on the type of building, the timeline is either 10 or 20 days, I believe, with the listing that is extended to 60 days.
Okay. So that means, just for those who are in the audience, that if you are applying for demolition, or your demolition would have to wait 60 days, whereas today it would be 10.
I believe it would be 20 for a commercial
20.
building.
Okay, 20. Okay, so it just extends the time. It doesn't say you can't, but it extends the time. And during that period of time, there would be further discussion with staff and council. Okay, thank you. And another question of staff, Councillor Singh.
Yeah, so you may want to come back.
Sorry.
That's okay. So I had a similar question to ask for difference between, and this is for the benefit of those that are in the gallery and those viewing. So difference between listing and designating. So once a property is listed, obviously it can't be demolished. So typically the Heritage Committee, therefore, once they receive a demolition request, they can quickly designate at that point as well. Is that right?
So what the listing process does is permit the time to consider designation if there is a concern for demolition. It does not mean that it would be pursued. There is a different set of guidelines under the Act, the Ontario Heritage Act, so the owners in that case would need to be notified again. It would need to go to Heritage Committee, and then ultimately Council would have the final say. It just provides the timeline to consider that before that demolition permit is issued.
Yeah, but that's a prerequisite before a demolition permit is afforded, though.
Yes.
Okay, so it does add one extra variable to a normal application for, a person that wants to, if they want to apply for a demolition or not.
Yes.
Okay, good. The other question I had is, of all the properties that are listed, typically how often is it where something was listed and a demolition application came, and we still allowed it versus it was still designated at that point?
Since we've begun the registry, we have not had any demolitions come through the designation process. In fact, we've only had one demolition, and it was a result of a fire, and the building was beyond repair.
Oh, I see. Okay, all right. So the listing procedure that's recent then. This is a new way of doing it then.
The listing has been in place since 2006.
Right, like your report has said. Okay, thank you. And Mr. Mayor, so I think unless Councillor Gazzola wants to move for deferral for this one particular property, but I'll allow him if he wants to, because he mentioned it.
We're not at that point yet. It isn't the original motion isn't on the floor yet.
Okay.
Councillor Gazzola.
While the staff are here, I just wanted to ask, you in the report you indicated that there were 650 properties have been evaluated. Have all, and these were evaluated to see whether we would put them on in the register, list them. Have we now looked at all the properties, or are there still some of those? Is that the complete list?
No, there's still about 250 properties to go through the four-step process.
Okay, that's what I wanted to. So was the 650 the starting point?
The numbers are somewhat flexible because there were multiple inventories over time, and we didn't have one database, so it's been a fun challenge. But I think the easiest way to describe it is when all is said and done, we'll have evaluated about 1,200 properties. Right now, 890 of those properties have been evaluated. About 100 have been listed. About 90 are gone. They were demolished for various reasons. About 530 we have removed from our inventory and have no further heritage status. About 170 are now designated either in a heritage district or as an individual property. And so that's where sort of the remaining approximately 250 comes back.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to get a scope of what we've done and what's left to be done. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Let's go to our third delegation, Rob Piombini and Brendan Clancy.
Good evening, Mayor Zara and councillors. What we're asking for is a deferral. We actually just purchased the property recently in October and really haven't had a chance to review with staff what a non-designated status means to our property. We are realtors. We're opening up a new office there, so we'd like the time to really evaluate this.
The address for that is?
914 King Street West.
Okay. You have purchased it, or you have it under contract?
We have purchased it. We actually closed on it in October.
Okay. 914 King Street West is the property. Okay. Councillor Singh, you have a question of the delegation.
Yeah, sir, it's just like the earlier delegation that kind of gave council some factors of why they're cautious with seeing the property listed, and they want an opportunity to engage staff further. Are there any apparent concerns that you have, or
Whereas
with
as
the
a
property?
realtor, I always look at anything that changes the status of the property affecting the value of the property. So we just want the chance to really review that with staff and understand what that means to the property's value.
So although it's not being designated yet, you still think listing itself does still alter the other...
It can alter that. If we decide to sell it in the future, it could have...
So it has a homeowner impact still?
Exactly.
Okay, okay, good. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I see no other delegations. We'll come back to that in a moment. I apologize. There was another delegation that was listed on the agenda for this same item, John Art of the Architectural Conservancy of Ontario. Sorry, John.
Mayor Zaire, councillors, my name is John Art. I'm past president of the North Waterloo Region branch of the Architectural Conservancy of Ontario, ACO for short. I'm delighted to be here on behalf of the executive of the branch to support the staff report CSD 13110, which recommends that 22 properties be listed on the Municipal Heritage Register of non-designated properties. We congratulate the Heritage staff and volunteers from Heritage Kitchener Committee for the work that has gone into the production of this report. The 22 properties are worthy additions to those already on the Municipal Heritage Register. We are pleased with the rigor and thorough objectivity of the selection and evaluation process. These properties have been identified as special or unique in at least one of a number of ways. It may be because of their architectural style and design value, or their direct association with an organization or an institution that is significant to the community, or their contextual value, which means that they may assist in defining the character of an area, or are physically, visually, or historically linked to the neighborhood, or are a significant landmark. It is great to see the Heritage Committee is using an informed and consult process to communicate with the community that goes beyond that which is required by provincial legislation. ACO agrees that the listing of these properties on the Municipal Heritage Register supports the quality of life community priority of the city's strategic plan through nurturing a sense of pride and community and promoting culture as both an economic driver and as a central element of a healthy community. Let's take a brief look at one of the properties in the report. I've chosen the 1.5-story row house at the corner of Victoria Street and Arthur Place, which, according to the report's statement of significance, was built around 1904. We have here a rare example of a row house built in the architectural style called Berlin Vernacular. It was built in this location so that the workers living there were close to their places of employment at nearby factories, such as the Interior Hardwood Company, the Lang Tannery, and the W.E. Wolfley Shoe Company. A colleague pointed out to me that this proximity to work is becoming as important now as it was more than 100 years ago, as we move away from a car-based society with the development of the light rail transit system and the development of the high-density core. This Arthur Place row house ties into a very real Berlin cultural heritage landscape, which of course includes the revitalization of our older factories into what is now Kitchener's unique innovation district. This Berlin vernacular row house is only one example of 21 other fine properties that Heritage Kitchener recommends be placed on the Municipal Heritage Register. In conclusion, the North Waterloo Region Branch of the Architectural Conservancy of Ontario urges Council to accept the report. Thank you very much.
Thank you. There's one question. Councillor Etherington.
Yeah, Mr. Hunt, recognizing your expertise in this field, are you satisfied that Kitchener officials are meeting and perhaps leading the field in procedure when it comes to contacting property owners who own properties about to be listed? Are you satisfied with that?
I'm sorry.
Do you think the Kitchener...
I didn't hear the question. I mean, I've got a hearing aids on, but I couldn't quite catch the whole... I know it has something to do with owners, but...
Yeah, recognizing your expertise in this field, do you think that Kitchener is leading the field when it comes to contacting property owners and letting them know that their properties are being listed? You must be familiar with other municipalities. Are you happy with what Kitchener is doing?
Well, I really can only see from what the Heritage Kitchener has said and written about this. Now, there may be a few property owners and so on are not satisfied. We may have heard of a few this evening, but I think that the intention and the focus is on communication with the property owner. And I think that really the timing might not be the best for the last two speakers and so on, but otherwise I'm quite satisfied with the communication process. I believe the owners have had a chance to speak to Heritage Kitchener, the December meeting, and also to individual staff if needed. So that's my point.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Councillor, there's another question. Councillor Singh.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And just a quick follow-up on your last answer to Councillor Etherington's question about the engagement with the property owner.
Yes.
In your perspective, do you think it's just communication, or it has to be a two-way? That we have our staff needs to be cognizant and open to the input that the property owner may have regarding an impact to their, to their investment or to their property. So, go ahead.
Well, I think the property owner may or may not know a heck of a lot about his property. If the property owner has only had it for 3 or 4 years, they may not have gone into the history of the and know the association of the property or the why it is wanted to be put on the list. But many owners do have pride in ownership and have researched their properties and so on. So they probably can provide a heck of a lot of information to Heritage Kitchener and to others concerning that. But I mean, that's, I can't say definitely for sure because it's, some owners know more, some owners don't know enough possibly about their properties.
And what if an owner doesn't want their property listed? What do you think, in your opinion? That's
what was the question?
What if a property owner doesn't want their
what if they
property
didn't
listed?
want it listed? Well, I think that the recommendation is to council to decide on the full report or to look at individual items of the report. So it's not up to me, it's up to council now to make a decision based on the information that has come through in the report.
I respect that. I just wanted to take your perspective that you yourself and, of course, the organization that you're a part of as well, that to see that you would agree that the property owner needs to be afforded an opportunity to give their input and to relay their concerns before we have any impact on their property. So,
well, I think that they've had a chance tonight. And they had an opportunity, I think, last December, and to express their view. And I think that Heritage Kitchener may be sympathetic with some property owners. If I remember correctly from a report of the minutes back in December, there was a few property owners, maybe one, I don't know, that have been allowed an extension to June or so for them to before Heritage Kitchener brings forth the recommendation for the registration or
and that's what I wanted to hear, that you acknowledging that that is an important, crucial step of the process as well. So thank you for your response.
Okay, and there's one more. Keep going by ones here. Councillor Ioannidis, bring forward that microphone.
Thank you, Mr. Hart, for coming in. My question is, you had mentioned a comment, you feel very sympathetic, City of Kitchener has been sympathetic to property owners. I just want to have a little bit of a question, a clarification on your organization. Does your organization provide funding to those property owners that get undue hardships from this council's designation?
No, we don't fund any.
Could you move over to the microphone?
Oh, I'm
please?
sorry. No, we don't. Actually, we have very, very little money to do anything other than speak and hold programs and so on. Now, the Heritage Kitchener, City of Kitchener, does provide money for designated houses, people who are property owners who are wanting to do work on their designated house. And so that's one excellent point that we know of that Kitchener does. Other cities can emulate this practice, I think, but no, the ACO does not provide money. They will, we have a few experts here and there that will come into, if there are questions that a person who owns a older home or a heritage home wants to ask us about, we will try to answer the question for them or provide a little bit of guidance, but no financial money at all.
Just one more quick question. Your organization is located in North Waterloo Region branches. Where is that in Waterloo?
Well, it's the North Waterloo Region branches is Kitchener, Waterloo, and 3 townships. The equivalent branch is Heritage Cambridge in Cambridge, and there's a branch in Guelph. The headquarters is in Toronto, and there are about 26 branches altogether.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay, you're welcome.
Yes, we have one more question. They keep popping up here like mushrooms. Councillor Gazzola.
No, I'm not. I just wanted to get lined up for a deferral
So
and some comments.
Okay, no further questions for you then.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll put you back in the queue. I'm going to take you off and just sort of go back into it if you don't mind. Okay, so those are the end of the delegation. That is the end of the delegations. I'll turn to Councillor Etherington to bring forward this report. And I think you can read the paragraph, but not necessarily listing all of them, just as they are listed on the agenda. Sorry, I've got to get, you have to click on your microphone. Okay, go ahead.
That, do you want both of them, Mr. Mayor, number 1 and 2, or just number 2?
No, just 2.
Just 2. That pursuant to Section 27 of the Ontario Heritage Act, the following properties be listed on the Municipal Heritage Register, each as a non-designated property of cultural heritage value of interest in accordance with the respective statement of significance attached as Appendix A to Community Services Department Report CSD-13-110. And do you want me to read them, Mr. Mayor?
No, they're just as listed, but perhaps you could read the last paragraph.
The last paragraph says that the 4-step listing process, as previously outlined in Staff Report DTS 05213 and DTS 09160, be refined for the purposes of the planning around rapid transit stations in the plural, project to use existing resource material where available and if appropriate, in lieu of developing an updated full statement of significance.
And it is seconded by? Councillor Galloway-Sealock. Do you not have the
Mr.
sheets?
Mayor, on the sheet here, Councillor Urbanovic already seconded.
All right. People are reading from the yellow sheets, but you should be reading from the whites, which has the mover and the seconder on there.
Sorry.
Okay, now speaking to the motion, and we would take deferrals first. But speaking to the motion, whenever they come up, we'll deal with them. Councillor Ioannidis.
I don't care who puts the deferrals through. I think if Councillor Gazzola wants to put the deferrals through, I just want to have a comment.
All right, you can make your comment. We
can make
still
my
go.
comment?
I'm going to then go with the deferrals.
Okay. I think our Heritage Kitchener and the way we decide on how properties are listed, I think is, in a polite term, I think it's broken. We appease residents who don't want sidewalks and go against the pedestrian charter, which affects accessibility because property owners are against them due to costs and maintenance. But when a property owner does not want their property to be listed or designated heritage for the same reasons, we throw them under the bus. So that's why I won't be supporting these designations. And I just wanted to let council know that in the future I will be putting forward a motion that I think property owners should have more of a say when it comes to dealing with their properties, because they're the ones who deal with the costs. And I want it, in that motion, I want to see proof from actual property owners in their acceptance in this, instead of a report, which I feel, when I look at it, I see it has a list of approvals of yes or no, and everything, half the stuff is unknown. If it's unknown, then why is it any cultural value? Why is it historical? I think that needs to be determined first before we just list stuff. That's just my comment.
Okay. We'll go now to Councillor Gazzola, and I think amongst other things, maybe you want to bring forward deferrals, and that was for 283 Duke Street West and 914 King Street. Those were the requests.
That's right, and I was going to give the deferral the same as there were some other ones that are being deferred till June. So they're going to be looking at those, and I would put the same timing on these two.
Okay. Do we know what the specific timing was in June? June 3rd? Okay.
Yeah, that's their. Okay, I also want to make some comments.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, that top one is June 3rd. I wasn't looking at that. Okay, so there is a motion for deferral for those two to June 3rd. Is there a seconder for that? Councillor Glenn Graham. Those in favor of the deferral? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. Now we'll go back to the The speakers list. Councillor Glenn Graham.
Did you want to finish? I want to get a... Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry, Councillor Gazzola. Did you want to speak?
Well, I'm in line.
Okay.
All right. I think it's really important to recognize the validity of the process here, and I'm glad that the delegations have highlighted the fact that there was an element of a break in the process. So if there's anything that's broken, it's the opportunity to ensure that the homeowners get a registered letter and that they have adequate opportunity for input and feedback. Beyond that, I think that there's an excellent process that we have here at the City of Kitchener. I think we do a really good proactive job of identifying properties of cultural significance for a number of reasons, as Mr. Arndt highlighted. And I think that it's really important that we do respect and value our heritage, because we've had examples in the past where we haven't done that, where we've neglected the properties, they've fallen into disrepair, and we hear about it time and time again. We have a really valuable asset here, and when we talk about other cities, people will talk about Waterloo or other places. When they don't have the same depth of cultural buildings, it's noticed. And I do think that we have to really recognize the value of what we're doing. Yes, we have to take into consideration the impact to the homeowners. I personally have a heritage property, but I do think that there's a value in recognizing the benefit to the whole city here. And that's really what we're here as councillors to protect, is the value for everyone, not just for this generation, but going forward. Once you lose these buildings, they're gone forever. So I do value this process, and I do support the rest of the buildings being listed. It's a good first step, and it still allows the property owner to have some impact if they do wish to pursue demolition. However, it provides for sober second thought to that process, which I think is important.
Thank you. Councillor Fernandez.
Thank you. I just wanted to reiterate that I'm going to support these listings of these properties. It's a good first step. It's 4 steps. We're not throwing anybody under the bus. Property owners, I'm sure, when they're purchasing and looking for older homes, are quite familiar with the age of the home, and that there's a possibility that there may be some historical significance. So I'm pleased to see that staff and Heritage Kitchener have been able to identify this number of properties as quickly as they have been. It is looking into the past for our future generations, and we will, Heritage Kitchener and our staff, I'm sure, will take it step by step with respect to what the property owner's consideration will be. We're not telling them to bring the building up as the previous delegate was concerned about bringing it up to building code, although, you know, speaking as a person who is concerned about building codes and safety of residents in homes, I would think that that would be his first concern. I am glad to see that we're on the right path, and I don't want to see us turn around and think that this house is not significant because it doesn't look architecturally significant, but that it indeed has some history and has a story behind it. I think Mr. Arndt really pointed that out tonight with the townhouse on the corner of Arthur. So I look forward to seeing these come forward.
Okay. Just as a point of clarification, the one we deferred, the 283, was not a residence. That was the large manufacturing plant on Duke Street, Duke and Bryda. Yeah, okay, just for clarification. Councillor Etherington. I'll try it once more. Leave your hands off it now.
Aye.
Councillor Etherington.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, I've watched for more than 40 years in Kitchener as the city, in my opinion, eats its young, I should say old, when it comes to protecting and preserving heritage properties. I also live in a heritage property in Victoria Park, and quite honestly, over the years, I've been sickened by the destruction and council's inability to protect some heritage properties that have been destroyed. In my opinion, speaking as council's representative on our Heritage Committee, I'm convinced we have to protect those properties, despite what we're told by landlords and property owners, because I'm also convinced that we're, in the way that we list and protect these properties, or try to protect them, it's a comprehensive, considerate way that is completely fair and respectful of property rights and those property owners. Bless you.
Thank you. Councillor Gazzola.
Thank you. I want to support these properties that have been listed. Have been very interested in history all my life and in heritage. I sat on the Heritage Committee for 7 years and then stepped down to give some other members of council an opportunity, but I have continued for the past 3 years to go to the Heritage Committee meetings. I would recommend that some members of council, other members of council, do so likewise, because I think there are a lot of erroneous facts on the table that need to be clarified. One of the big things that we need to, that's misunderstood, when a property is listed, the owners of that property do not have to come back to Heritage Kitchener, to staff, if they want to make changes to their property and make improvements and do things like that. The only issue is when there is, the property is to be totally demolished. But day to day, there is no undue hardships. I'm surprised to hear those comments of undue hardship from this council's designations. I haven't heard of them. People generally that do go the step of having their properties designated usually want that done. I think in the past we have done some poor things in this community and losing a lot of our heritage. I was around when the old City Hall was destroyed and removed, and anyone that's been in this community for a few years will always remind us of that incident. The point is, and I want to give staff commendation also, the staff and the Heritage Committee. If you're just listed, you don't need to go back to the committee and to staff for approval for any changes. If you're in a heritage district like Victoria Park, you do have to go back to make sure that we're not destroying the heritage as it is there. You have to go back. I have seen people come back many times to the committee and to staff, and the committee have been so accommodating. They sit down and work out ways that things can be accomplished without, and cost is always an important and essential thing to consider, and staff and the committee realize that. So I think the process we have in place is excellent. I think we're leaders in this province for the process that we have in place. Can it be improved? Anything can be improved. I don't think there's any question about that. But I have seen over the years that people that have concerns have had opportunities to come talk to staff. Staff are very accommodating, and I hope we continue. We of all the properties, 1,200 properties, we've listed 100. It's not a huge thing, and we have another 250 to look at. So I'm sure you can always improve communications and things like that, but some of these comments that I'm hearing from members of council, they're unfair. So in conclusion, I think it's important to have properties listed. It does give us, for the sake of history, it gives the council of the day a few extra days to look at a property before it's demolished. I've not heard in my 40 or so years around this horseshoe, not on this side, I have not ever seen, there have been a lot of arguments and a lot of discussions, but I've never seen where someone has not been able to go through and demolish their property. So I would encourage all members of council to support this recommendation.
Okay. Well, no, you made it by 15 seconds. Councillor Yanetsky.
Thank you. I too will be supporting this recommendation, and I do support also the two deferrals for consideration from the property owners who have shown up to express their interest in wanting further information and investigation, and that's fine. When this process started back 2006, or even before then actually, I was part of the Heritage Committee at the city here, and I was part of this process in terms of bringing this four-step process about as one of the members of the Heritage Committee. And it was at that time that we knew that the process we had before, where we just put the properties on a list, was not properly done. And that became the issue from a legal perspective of not following the right thing. But we thought we were doing the right thing at the time. So we adopted this particular four-step process. That made it more legal and in conformity with the Ontario Heritage Act. So in this way, we were the leaders in terms of bringing this forward. We thought we were at the time, and I still think we did at the time. Comparisons were made with other municipalities. However, we are in the right direction, and I think it's one of the best processes that are around in Ontario. So we should support it. I am prepared to, as I mentioned, support the two deferrals and move forward on this, as this is the right thing to do at this time.
Thank you. Councillor Singh.
Yes, thank you. And I'll support the properties except for the ones that we deferred. I had exception to those, obviously because of the homeowners felt that they needed an opportunity to further engage our staff, and I think that's an opportunity that we definitely have to protect and allow. As the youngest member of council, even by maybe a few months, still I have a strong desire to preserve a part of our history, aspect of our heritage, to show the next generation, to show my kids of where we came from and how we were, and to preserve and respect that. Yet, my questioning today was pinpointing on an important aspect. And through Councillor Etherington's comment, he alluded to that. And that aspect is that we need to ensure that there is fair and respect for property rights to the owner. We may or may want to not acknowledge it, but the facts are real. Listing ultimately can lead to designation, which has a substantial impact to a property owner. And even listing itself has an impact, as someone from the real estate industry, as one of the delegations before today indicated, that it's their impression, if a property is even listed, if they had to resell, that could impact their property value. And we may not believe that or not, but that does exist. And we have to acknowledge that concern needs to be interpreted, taken into respect from the property owner as well. Because, again, it's one thing to want to protect our history, but it should not be at the cost of someone else. They should be part of that dialogue. They should be part of that process to take on willingly those costs. And I really respect those individuals that have taken, and I think we have two council members that live in heritage-designated properties, and have taken on that responsibility to preserve a part of our history, and I respect them immensely for it, and I respect many other residents that have done so as well. But that needs to be a dialogue, and that needs to be a conversation that needs to be had. And those are the changes I would like to see, that we take on further engagement with the property owners. And I'm glad to see Councillor Ioannidis mentioned that he might be bringing something forward. So again, it's important to preserve our history, but it's important also to make sure that those that are being affected by our decisions are included in dialogue.
Thank you. Councillor Verbanovich.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Just very briefly, because I think this has gone on a lot longer than I would have expected it to. I certainly will be supporting the motion that's before us. I think it's important for us to maintain some of the smaller town historic feel of our municipality. We know that that's something that our citizens value. And by undertaking some of the listings that we are today and the work that our Heritage Committee does overall helps us achieve that objective going forward. I personally don't feel that our heritage system is broken. I think there are some things that obviously we can do, as there is in anything, to make a process better, and I'm always willing to look at those. But I think it's important to recognize that, as Councillor Gazzola and others have indicated, there have been times in the past where I think if we know what we know now, there were decisions that were made by this municipality that didn't respect heritage in a way that our citizens would have liked it to happen. And I think we need to learn from those and move forward in a positive way.
Are there any other speakers who have not yet spoken? Okay. Councillor Yanetsky, you're back on, but you've already... No? Okay. All right. Recorded vote has been called for. We're going to deal with the first one first. That's 8-16 Arthur Place, where Councillor Singh has declared a conflict of interest. You can now vote. Those in favor? Opposed? One abstention. Motion carries. The balance of the addresses on a recorded vote. You can now vote. Those in favor? Opposed? The motion carries. Okay, we will now go to delegation D, which is Harold Druitz. His notes have been distributed. Welcome, Harold.
Good evening. After the special council meeting on December 9th, 2013, at which time the main subject was procedural changes to promote more effective meetings, I fully expected a change in the way the 2014 budget public input evening meeting would proceed. When I registered to be a delegate, I was actually surprised. The correspondence between the clerk's office and myself indicated no changes. That is why our group supporters and the Victoria Park residents, in addition to you, councillors, were surprised at the finance chair's initial ruling. Councillor Etherington, you were the first councillor to be recognized by the chair, and we thank you for challenging the chair. If a change in procedure was to take place, this should have been communicated days before the meeting to the clerk's office, and the clerk, in turn, I suggest, would have notified the delegations. I will continue my other points in a shortened form. On a public input session meeting, we suggest it is only respectful of the public that council start the meeting on time. Some of you councillors suggested members of the public should come talk to you on an individual basis. That is not public input. The finance chair's initial ruling was not like the casino public input evenings. The public was informed well ahead of these meetings and how these meetings would proceed. No such communication took place. As per Compass Kitchener's report card to citizens dated November 18th, 2013, it states very clearly on page 5A-4, Quality of Life, Strategic Priority 1.1, all voices matter. To us, that means each and every voice matters. Councillor Etherington, you asked me how many supporters there are in our group. You know my reply. Today I will give you a more direct answer. At least 190 on our list and growing every day, and I had coffee at McDonald's with one today. In summary, if the public would have been told up front the procedure for this public input evening is changing, then the public would have been more accepting of the new format. As you probably know, I could go on, but I will refrain.
Thank you. Councillor Etherington.
Just a point of order, Mr. Chair. I did not challenge the chair. I questioned several rulings, but you know what it means to challenge the chair. I avoided challenging the chair. I just wanted to make that clear.
Okay, yeah, the terminology challenging the chair is a procedural issue which requires a vote of council. So I assume that, Mr. Drewitz, you didn't mean that in the technical sense.
No, not really, but I mean, I'm a member of the public, and I did watch the tape again, and not only myself in our group thought that was the case, but if that's the wrong wording, then my apologies.
Okay. I don't see any other questions, so thank you very much for coming. The last delegations that we have, there are two delegations on item 8A, which is under unfinished business, and this is regarding Victoria Park and equipment. It does note there on the agenda that only those delegations presenting new information will be heard. So there are two delegations who have indicated that they wish to speak. I will be looking for new information only. Leslie Clare.
Leslie is just walking
Okay.
in, so...
Leslie, you wouldn't have heard my input or my preamble, and that was that the agenda did say that only those delegations presenting new information will be heard, and so I am looking for new information only in your presentation.
Sorry about that. Thank you. Mayor Chair, councillors, operations. As you well know, I'm Leslie Clare of 166 David Street. I've been told to share new anecdotal information underscoring the necessity for effective resolution. I will weave that information into a statement of our concerns regarding Operations' latest report. We do have hope, Council's determination to resolve this issue, and significantly Operations' clear statement to Council that the satellite model is necessary for fiscal and environmental reasons. Our concerns. To be polite, we are extremely frustrated. After more than 6 months of dialogue with Operations and 2 directives from Council, a well-defined solution resolving all issues in a timely manner is still not on the table. We wonder why. I refer you to the last page of Operations report, the paragraph beginning quality of life, second sentence, quote, equipment within Victoria Park is a necessary evil to meet the needs of the users and an integral part of the community. Last phrase loses me. However, non-park vehicles have little or nothing to do with the park or park users. Their presence is only consequent to the very important question not asked in 2008, a question that could not be asked due to a lack of transparency. Now, Operations has put that question on the table. Where are equipment and supplies necessary to serving specific locales going to be housed in a way that is both fiscally responsible and resident-friendly? Frankly, we are dismayed that Operations still presents the Victoria Park satellite as an appropriate location. Convenience and budget simply are not sufficient reasons to dump an operations hub into a residential cul-de-sac in the midst of a heritage community. We are concerned, therefore, that money will be spent on the Victoria Park Maintenance Building, a building that is in a state of ill repair, to rectify the health and safety concerns raised by workers to operations, when really funds should be directed to establishing an appropriate site. I am also to voice the continued concern of parents who repeatedly express that the safety of children be viewed as a critical issue in decision-making tonight. Some parents have stated it is not a matter of whether a tragedy is going to occur, but rather a matter of when. Consequently, we are concerned with the number of machines until the long-term solution eliminating non-park machines is in place. However, we do not want to get lost in a debate regarding the number of machines, thereby obscuring the real issue, the presence of this hub where it is currently. We do wonder why we cannot get a list that matches our experience. We know of at least 12 additional vehicles, not 4. One of our concerns is the dismissal of the impact on the quality of our lives. I do not have time to address both further detail regarding the impact on our lives and our frustration with the different options. I will address the former, hoping that you will ask me questions regarding our concerns with options. The quality of life impact cannot be ignored. The impact of non-park vehicles extends beyond our neighborhood. When we cannot deliver at our work, be it at home or outside, we are not living up to our responsibilities towards others. That can be serious, and it can have financial implications for us. The noise from these machines interferes with work in 3 ways: sleep disruption and deprivation. If you've been watching TVO last week, you know the serious consequences. We're on a road to Alzheimer's. Restorative activity and work performance due to sleep deprivation and due to noise interference. While I know of others with these issues, I can only speak for myself. And I'm choosing to do that to really detail the impact.
You have half a minute to wrap up.
My work demands irrevocable reliability, trustworthiness, and absolute concentration. I work with survivors of extreme systemized violence. My ability to deliver these attributes has been greatly compromised by non-park vehicle noise. In the past 8 months, I have let down many survivors, one irreparable. For me, that's...
Your time is up. Your time is up. But there are some questions for you. Okay? Councillor Verbanovich.
Thanks. Thank you very much for coming in today and sharing some perspectives with us. I guess my first question has to do with your reference to not having been able to get accurate information as to how many vehicles. And I know the initial report from staff actually provided a list of vehicles that are there now. I've since tried to get an understanding of what exactly is the difference between what was there prior to Brom Street closing versus what's there now. And my understanding is that the difference is 3 trackless units in the winter and 2 sweepers in the summer is the difference. Mm-hmm. You've referenced 12 vehicles, I think?
Yes.
So what are you basing that on?
Our experience, our observation, and numerous conversations with Greg Hummel, including a 2-hour meeting in December when we tried with Frank Etherington and Tim Wolf to really define this. So we are in agreement of the 3 trackless that have mower apparatus on them that go out and mow. But there are 3 similar machines, and we were discussing this at our meeting last week, and they do not have this mower contraption on it. I asked Greg if they ever removed it, and he said absolutely not. So these are 3 distinct machines that look very similar, if not the same, to the trackless without the mower contraption. And they're in and out of the park on a daily basis, X number of times, and they...
In the winter months?
No, in the summer. And I think they become sidewalk snowplows in the winter. Whether they are sweepers or smaller mowers during the summer, I don't know their function. I don't see them in the park. We only see them on our streets. And then when we were going through the list, I know from conversation that park staff have 2 new vehicles. So that's 5 in addition to what they are citing. And then there are also the 3 special event sweepers. And there were new ones brought in this year, at least they seem to be new, and a new style or something. I don't remember seeing them around like I have this summer and through the fall. And they're the ones that clean up after festivals, but I think they're also used beyond that.
Okay, so I'm going to ask one other question. If we were able to get you close to where, or to the point where things were prior to Brom Street closing, is that what the neighborhood is looking for? In other words, we never heard any concerns before, so I presume that what happened before was deemed reasonable. Is that fair?
I think that's reasonably fair. I think there are changes that are happening. The use of the park has increased an enormous amount, okay? And so there are a lot more maintenance vehicles required. So I think there is also concern that park management be done prudently so that there isn't extra trips going back in, you know. I know also that, to quote Tim Wolf, there's been an explosion in Hort sites and Hort Cruise, and there will be more because of the development around the lake that it was supposed to happen but has been delayed. So there's going to be beds all around the lake. So there is concern because all of that right now is functioning out of the back. And as I just said, that building is in a state of ill repair. So it really begs the question as to what is going to happen in the future.
Okay, so, but again, just, I guess I'm looking for...
A firm answer.
Yeah, firm yes or no, and maybe I'll try to help you with it. If we can get things back in terms of the non-park uses to what they were prior to Brom Street closing, and have, in addition to that, what's necessary to look after the park, which is the vast majority of it, is that what you're looking for?
Our understanding was that only park maintenance vehicles were stored there before, that post-Bram closures, that's when the implant occurred. You know, so I can say, you know, before street reconstruction began in 2009, I never had any problems doing my work. I never lost income. I didn't have to soundproof my house, which I spent tens of thousands of dollars doing. It hasn't made any difference. So, you know, if I can go back to then, but how do you even know what that was? Because of all the changes that are occurring. And that's why I'm fudging with an answer to your question. I'm not trying to be difficult. No, I think it's just really difficult, given the changes, to be that precise. And our concern is that when going back like that, there will be an attempt, or there's just the concern of the slippery slope of what we call the creeping scope.
Right.
And, you know, oh, well, they won't notice this one vehicle, and then another one comes in. And honestly, we really don't want to be back here talking to you about this issue. No offense intended, but
Okay,
thank you.
Our timing is up for that period of questions. Councillor Dan Glenn Graham.
Thank you very much, Leslie, and appreciate your patience with this process. It sounds like it's been very frustrating. Has the group noticed any changes recently based on your recent meetings? Because staff have made some efforts to try and mitigate the impact of the noise with the vehicles.
One thing I didn't get to relate was I was supposed to have 2 nights of restorative sleep recently, and from 11 p.m. till 5 a.m. I was woken up, I don't know, 6 or 7 times. I gave up trying to get any sleep at 5 o'clock in the morning. The next night my sleep was disrupted by the dump truck taking salt back there. So no, it is not different. And, you know, often I'll look out and you hear them roar by, the sidewalk snow plows, and you look at your street, it isn't even plowed, but they've gone by 100 times. Well, that's an exaggeration, but many, many times. So we don't have the mowers, we don't have street festival sweepers, that kind of thing. But the snow sidewalk plows are very busy this year. There is no let up. It's 7 days a week right now. And it's any time of day. You cannot count on any quiet. And, you know, even in spite of soundproofing my house, I can hear my neighbors on their front porch when they talk. I can hear what they say. So you can imagine the intrusiveness when you're trying to have a conversation with a client who is vulnerable, and other people have to stop their conversations. They have to stop their work. So no, it hasn't really let up in that way.
And I'm sorry for your frustration. It sounds like it's a real hardship to live through. Focusing on the future now, are there any options that you think, or a combination of options that you think would work?
Well, we have put forth option 11, as you know, which combine different pieces from the various options. So, frankly, we like the idea best of a one-stop fits all, because that's copacetic, there aren't problems, and so the option for West Avenue seems like a viable one, and I understand from Councillor Etherington and some others that that property is really, really huge. It came up early in discussion. I don't even know if it was really a resident who first presented it. So we like that idea. If that isn't going to work, then obviously a combination of the others to simply get these non-parked vehicles out of the park. And to do it, the sidewalk snowplows and salt pile immediately.
Thank you for sharing that. And in terms of option 11, have you put that in writing to council and staff?
I thought that you had received...
Yes, we received an email on...
from John Dinner?
January 23rd from John Dinner.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So it was that.
Okay.
And that in conjunction with what I presented last time regarding our request, the different components, and the long term. You know, looking for a long term, we need an immediate interim solution, and then we need a long-term solution.
Thank you very much, and I do appreciate your looking also at the fact that we have to balance this with the budget, the fiscal accountability aspect of being councillors. So thank you for that perspective as well.
Councillor Etherington.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, I've got a couple of questions for this delegate, the other delegate, staff, and then I'd like to move a motion on this issue, which has now been with us for at least 5 months and looks like it'll continue into the spring. So my first question to Leslie is related to support. I have a feeling that some people would like to dismiss this issue because it's a small group of residents. Leslie, through appearances in this chamber and a petition that I believe you presented here, was what kind of support are you getting around the park?
I don't want to infringe on Dominique's presentation. She is going to address public support.
Okay.
But I can tell you that last time you saw how many people were here.
Yeah.
And I've had a lot of conversations initiated by people when I'm out and about. People have phoned me because of the media coverage. People from different wards, I don't know if you've heard from any, they say that they have phoned you, have said, how can this happen? You know, this simply should not be. And so the public support now really does extend beyond our cul-de-sac, beyond Victoria Park neighborhood. So the support is still very strong because people don't want this to continue.
And I'll ask the other question of Dominique, but one final question. You mentioned this, but you obviously think that if the salt and the debris pile from the sweepers were relocated, that would help ease the traffic as well?
Oh, definitively. I mean, the sweepers are back and forth during the summer, and then, of course, the garbage truck comes in to collect the debris. This seems very disrespectful of our neighborhood, that debris from downtown Kitchener would be carted through it and then carted back out through it. With the salt pile, obviously. But then there's the issue of fuel, because they refuel back there. So they go back in there for the fuel, and then the hog truck comes in, and it's a huge truck. And, it comes in at whatever hours. So as long as they are functioning out of there, and as long as the water truck is functioning out of there, then you have this constant relay of machines. And I understand from Greg Hummel it would cost less than $500 to have the water truck hooked up to a fire hydrant. It wouldn't have to come into our neighborhood at all.
Well, Leslie, I think we'll be hearing from Mr. Hummel. I really appreciate, by the way, the time you and your neighbors are spending on this issue. I always admire residents who get involved in these issues, so thanks very much for coming in.
Okay.
Councillor Singh.
Thank you, Leslie, and thank you again for your delegation to come and give your perspective of how this is impacting you. And I think I've had a conversation with earlier as well, indicating, I am sympathetic to the quality of life, the residents that are affected by whatever operations are happening out of the park. And so my question to you, as you referenced, interpretation, disruption to your business and your daily function at home. In conversation with staff, has the working group, or the group in general, requested for any noise studies to be done to see exactly what level of interference it's causing?
There's been conversation around that, but the fact is that these machines are so loud that they obliterate conversation. So I'm not sure what kind of investigative tests are truly necessary, with all due respect. We live with the impact, we know. And I also think that it varies where your location is, the structure of your residence, etc. My house is not double brick. It's very close to the street. The second story overhangs the front porch. And in spite of the $30,000+ that just the latest attempt, it doesn't do anything. And I was told, because of the structure, it isn't going to make a difference. So I think people are impacted in different ways. I know some people have said, they have to close the windows because they have children who are sensitive to sound in the summer, in the heat. So if they don't have air,
No, I understand that.
But I don't know how, apart from the fact that they obliterate conversation, even conversations inside your house, I don't know how you would go about doing that, and I don't see how it would be helpful.
The reason why I ask, and I apologize if I'm interrupting, the reason why more now than before, it's because we're in a hard timeline, so we're only given a certain span of time to ask questions until I lose my chance. So the reason why I was asking is obviously we have certain bylaws that restrict that type of activity by us and by other residents as well.
Right.
And so that it collaborates what the residents are outlining. And that's why I ask if a study's been done. And if you're not aware of it, I'll ask staff the same question as well. So my last question to you would be, you've referred to that the activity has changed. So although there may be just additional few vehicles in comparison to prior to 2009, but the overall activity has changed. So even if some of these vehicles were housed somewhere else, so they're taken out of the equation, but you've referenced it yourself, because the park itself, the dynamics of the park is changing, the activity around the area, the further work that's happening in Victoria Park as well. So certain disruption will still exist. Do you not agree?
Of course it is. And we embrace that and adjust to it. But there is a very huge difference between park vehicles that are tending to the park. They aren't these big noisy ones, and well, the street sweepers are, but they don't have to be housed back there. They can be housed elsewhere where they're more direct on site, so they aren't going through our neighborhood. You cannot lump these vehicles all together. They're the vehicles that are non-park, they're big, they're noisy, and it's really changed our neighborhood. One resident's 19-year-old son, who's on a sports scholarship in the U.S., noted how disruptive the noise of these vehicles were when he was home visiting in the summer. A 19-year-old boy. So it's impacted.
No. And as I said, I do sympathize with the group if those noises do exist. And I hope that this council will be sympathetic too, because we've shown that sympathy to residents on Glasgow with detracting from what staff recommendation was with a sidewalk, and numerous others in the past too. And there's tons of examples in my ward where residents are in an uproar, where staff may have a different opinion, but I hope when they come before this council that they would be given the same type of understanding. So thank you for your comments.
Thank you. Those are the only questions. Dominique Whalen is the next delegation.
Good evening, Mayor Zaire, councillors. I do swear that the majority of my presentation was new prior to Leslie stepping up to the podium, so I hope that you bear with me because she's touched on a number of points that I specifically am addressing. I'll try to keep it brief. One of the points that Leslie touched on was the fact that public support is growing. I mean, not just the fact that there were 25 plus people last time and we have the petition, but there is certainly more awareness and people stopping in the street or at community meetings and expressing their surprise that there still is not a resolution to this issue. And that they feel that this is a zoning, planning and transparency issue for council. And they're surprised and statement that an operational hub really doesn't belong in a residential area. So again, the number did say they call their councillors, and I guess the proof is in the pudding to see whether, there were a number of you that received phone calls from individuals in your ward. That brings me to the next topic, and it's specifically the recent submission or the paper from operations and their recommended option number 1. But one of the things I want to mention before I take a close look at this document is to recap the aspects. Now, at the last opportunity we had to talk to council, I believe that Leslie handed out a document that stated, it was called Our Request, and it basically identified the main aspects of the problem being maintenance vehicle traffic, the salt pile, debris pile, water truck, and horticultural crew. So these are the aspects that we'd be looking to be addressed in any solution. So we did meet, we reviewed, we discussed it, and I guess the overall opinion was that the recommended option of number 1 fell far short of addressing these 5 aspects. Now, we came up with what we affectionately call option 11, and I do believe we mentioned that was emailed to all members of council so that you, I believe you might have that in front of you. And again, it identifies the staff trips, it references resources like water, salt pile, and debris pile. It indicates that there were a number of pieces of various options in the paper that could be combined into that hybrid, option 11. So the relocation of equipment, whether it be to Rockway, to the Kitchener-Wilmot Hydro location downtown, but there are options that were mentioned. So it's not really, I guess our perspective was it wasn't one option to the exclusion of others, but there were pieces that had merit in a number of other options. Some we really didn't look at because we felt that the dollars associated with the new construction, whether it be $200,000 to $240,000, that was just not a very realistic solution. But there are ways of doing it that would be more fiscally responsible. Part of the aspect is that we live in a designated heritage district, so I'm one of those people that go, hurrah, when you talk about listings on heritage lists. And I have a few funny stories about the house I lived in. I believe it was one of J.M. Schneider's sons that built the house, and there's a few historical pieces that may or may not made it there. So while we recognize that it is highly unrealistic that we would leave tonight with a final solution that addresses all components of the problem, I guess what we're looking for is ultimately a comprehensive and thoughtful solution that, one that looks at establishing an operational hub necessary to maintain and house the vehicles and supplies for maintaining the downtown core and area. And we're looking for that to happen outside of Victoria Park. And certainly that it be appropriately located, not in a residential area, and certainly not in Victoria Park's most prominent heritage district. We believe this solution needs both a short term, so we're looking for something to be put in place by April, as well as a medium to longer term that we hope to have, we're hoping to see some implementation within 6 months. So our humble request is that operations come back with a proposal and one that addresses all the key elements for the next council meeting. And I'm going to take the temerity of quoting you, Mayor Zaire, that let's get it right. Questions? And I'm even beat my time tonight.
You had 30 seconds left, so you're good.
I timed it, and it was 4 minutes and 45, so I done good. Thank you, Leslie.
All right. Councillor Etherington.
Yeah, Dominic, to your knowledge, were residents ever told when Bram Street closed that the number of vehicles in Victoria Park would be increased, or was it your understanding that the vehicles would go to the Kitchener operations facility?
I have to tell you, I've lived in my current residence since '99, so I guess that makes it almost 15 years. I was completely unaware that the closure of the Brand Street location would result in additional vehicles being stored in the Victoria Park area. And I've certainly learned an awful lot in this whole process. And while I appreciate the beauty of all the horticultural beds in the downtown and other areas, I guess I don't appreciate having the vehicles that service them going back and forth in front of my house. And Leslie's point earlier was that the predominant houses that are affected are along David, and then the only way to get to that location is either up Schneider or Dill. There is no option. So a short answer is no. I was not aware. I asked a few residents and neighbors because I said, what is happening? Like, why are there so many trucks? I think it was referenced, I'm a porch dweller in the summertime, so I enjoy my porch. I work out of my home, and it's one of my pleasures to see my neighbors and the stream of people going by. So it strikes me personally, more in the summertime. And I asked the question, like, what is going on? And I've learned more. So the short answer is no, I was not aware. And the long answer, well, you've got it.
Thank you.
Councillor Fernandez.
Thank you, Dominique, for your information and your presentation. Just one question, because I'm looking at all the different recommendations that you have. Is there a time, and maybe staff will be able to answer this as well, that the salt truck or the water truck could come through that would be less intrusive? I think that these are quite large vehicles, and seeing in your recommendation, you're suggesting that they can be filled in other locations. If those are two very large vehicles that are coming through a number of times during the week, is there a time that you think would be preferable if that was part of our solution?
Well, as part of the page that we sent out on option 11, one of the things that we are asking for is the immediate relocation of the sidewalk snowplows and the salt piles, because, I mean, obviously, the worse the weather and the more the streets need to be tended to, the more salt we go through, so that has an effect on the traffic. So personally, I don't know if there is a fast and easy solution to that, but that would certainly be something that we would ask if it could be done sooner rather than later.
Okay, that's something I'm going to ask staff too. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. There are no more questions. Thanks, Dominique.
Thank you very much.
Okay. I was going to, I see Councillor Urbanovich is up there, but Councillor Etherington was, okay, for questions first. I would go back to Councillor Etherington, though, for a motion. He indicated earlier that he would bring forward a motion. So, Councillor Urbanovich, first, there was a question.
Thanks. Yes, I have a few questions of staff that I'd like to understand. I guess the first one would be to Mr. Hummel. Greg, I understand that there's been a process change in terms of how we handle the tracklesses and loading them up with salt. In the past, from what I understand, what happened was we had a truck that did a lot of the hand bombing around the downtown, in other words, hand shoveling and so on, where that was necessary. And those crews also refilled our sidewalk snowplows as they needed to be refilled. Now, from that truck, now I understand the sidewalk snowplows go back to the snow pile at the facility behind Victoria Park. Is that in fact correct? That's my understanding from the front lines, and so I guess I'm trying to understand why that change and could we go back to handling it the way we used to handle it?
Mr. Hummel, and perhaps you can just keep your microphone on then, because there may be other questions to you.
Sure. Through you, Mr. Mayor. That is partially true in the fact that the machines, when they left Brom Street, were loaded, and depending on their vicinity in the downtown core, would go back to Brom Street and reload. And if they were, per se, up near Frederick Street or Benton or Madison, then we had hand shoveling crews that would meet up with them and load them, and that is still the case today. Part of the use in the park is machines are going back there to load, to work on King Street and Side Street, but they're also salting the walkways within Victoria Park. So could we go and remove that salt pile? We could. It would still mean a matter of us having to bring trucks in and fill them, but that was partially what we used to do, and we continue to do so.
Okay, so I think that's one area, by the sounds of it, where we might be able to address the issue. The second one has to do with the salt pile. While I recognize that this isn't a long-term solution, if we found an alternate home for the vehicles, is there a reason we couldn't continue to use the existing salt dome or put the new temporary portable one that you have on the Brom Street lands and continue to use that strictly from a salt point of view?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that was part of the options 3 and 4 previous, was to relocate that and set it up, whether somewhere over at the Brom Street location. I mean, there are certainly options. We can still truck it in, and we do have hand salting crews out on a regular basis that would be able to meet up with these machines as they do their routes.
Okay. So yeah, I guess as we go forward, I would certainly like to see that pursued. My last question has to do with the parking garage, and I don't know if this is a question for Ms. Houston or Mr. Chapman, but it's my understanding that the parking garage really is never 100% full, save and except for Christkindle Market, which is 5 days of the year, maybe a handful of other days. I also understand there's a few spots that are considered non-rentable spots, and I know in the bottom corner of P2 we have some vehicles already and wash bay and so on. Is there a reason we couldn't, since we're not fully loaded up down there anyway, simply say park those vehicles there and don't bill anything, don't charge anything, so there's not this transfer of money because the spots are empty anyway?
Who wants to answer that? Ms. Houston.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I think you're quite right that our parking facilities aren't totally full, other than Christkindle Market, perhaps. So we could look at City Hall. We could look at one of the other garages as well. Might be another option to see which one would suit the best. In terms of lost revenue, it still is a lost opportunity in terms of being able to rent in the long term. So while that might be a stopgap solution, I'm not sure that it's a long-term solution.
I guess I would suggest that if this solves our problem, and we haven't been able to fully rent it in the last 20 years anyway since we've opened this building, then it seems like a reasonable solution for me that would give us a win-win without putting additional tax burden on the taxpayers. So I would certainly, I think any long-term solution, I would look to see something that would not see a transfer of revenue for parking spots in here as part of the solution, because it's simply a transfer that isn't real because we're not fully sold out anyway.
You finished? Okay, Councillor Etherington, I'm good. Should I hold off, or you? Okay. Okay, certainly, Councillor Etherington.
Greg, just so that I'm crystal clear on this, and maybe there's an answer that maybe it's impossible to answer. How many vehicles are at the park? How many are housed at the park? And how many were there before Bram Street closed?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, off the cuff right now, I don't remember exactly what was there before the closure of Bram. What came over from Bram was 3, we refer to them as trackless, which are out mowing machines out on routes, and the 2 sidewalk sweepers that are used downtown, King Street and the side streets, as well as 50% of the time is sweeping the walkways and trails in Victoria Park. Just to further, and a point that I missed in option 1 is the sidewalk sweepers. We have every intention, as Councillor Verbanovic has said, is either to relocate the sidewalk sweepers to City Hall, or at a worst case scenario is utilize the front garage off Richmond Street. The fact that they still are needed in the park to clean the walkways, especially during the summer and geese season, their utilization in the park is still needed, but it's an opportunity to move those pieces of equipment away from the machine shop in the back. They still can dump in any of the dumpsters we have available, whether the one over by the machine shop or the dumpster at City Hall. So it's another item that we're looking at. We just haven't got the exact solution, whether it'll be at the Richmond Street garage or whether it'll be at City Hall. So that's also in the works at this point.
Okay. When the Kitchener Operations Facility was established, did Council ever discuss this whole issue of satellite works yards or relocating vehicles into what is a heritage residential area?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I can't answer that. I don't know if it was ever discussed at senior management or with council. Prior to moving to the operations facility, we had a number of satellites for many years, including Victoria Park. Had a number of machines operating out of there dealing with downtown, Queens Boulevard, as well as the park. So outside of those 5 pieces of equipment that came over, we are utilizing the park very similar to what we used to.
Thank you. And a couple of quick points. Did we, or did you, or has anyone approached Hydro with that suggestion that was made that we might be able to share some of the facility at Hydro?
We had spoken to a number of staff working out of there. I don't have their names at hand. There was some concern about access, the timing of access, and the machinery coming out of there and what runs out of their yard. So once we had that discussion, it didn't seem to be a viable option.
Okay. And one last question. I've always been a great supporter of staff I think you are one of the better staff people that I've ever dealt with. And I'm wondering why it's taking so long to... We're coming up with options galore, but why don't we know the answers to those options? We've had several months to find out, A, whether we could move vehicles to Rockaway, B, whether one could go to Bridgeport, any of these options. I just wonder why it's taken so long.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, part of it is looking at the opportunity and whether it's going to work or not. And I'll use the Bridgeport example. When we originally looked at Bridgeport as an opportunity to put one of the machines when Brom Street closed down, we did not have fuel there. We did not have an opportunity to wash the equipment, which needs to be done on a daily basis with the grass cutting machines. Through the summer and into the fall, staff working down there, an opportunity to do some work down there, Bridgeport, Joe Thompson area, and we've been looking for opportunities. So they took the initiative to say, you know what, we've upgraded the water supply, we've put a power washer down there, we have a gas bunker that stores fuel down there that could utilize, then maybe there is an opportunity. By that point, October in, that mowing equipment now is finishing up. It's not utilized in the winter. We don't know how we'd be able to utilize the sidewalk plows that run the routes down through Bridgeport through the winter months. So it's not a clear-cut answer at this point, but it's certainly something we know that we can deal with for 7.5, 8 months of the year.
Okay. Thank you very much. And Mr. Mayor, I have a motion that I would like to...
I'll keep coming back to you, but I still have a lineup of questions. Councillor Davey.
Thank you, and Mr. Hummel, you might anticipate my question. If we implement option 1, am I going to start to hear concerns from residents in Bridgeport?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I don't believe you will. We have staff working out of that facility 7 days a week, 7 a.m. to 11 p.m. at night. So running this piece of equipment is going to coincide with those hours. They're running diamond groomers, they're running other mowing on all the fields down there. So I don't believe there's going to be any more conflict.
Okay. And again, having a difficult time grasping the impacts, and if you can't estimate now, that's fine, but if we were to implement option 1 and just leaving, looking at the other option off the table for a moment, from before the residents contacted us with this issue, can you estimate either the number of trips fewer or the percentage fewer vehicles that would be traveling in and out of the Victoria Park area from option 1?
Through you, Mr. You know what, I couldn't even fathom a guess right now. I certainly could sit down and think about it and come up with an answer.
If you could, actually, I think that's a valuable bit of information and something we can communicate to the residents as well. And didn't mean to put you on the spot, but I think that's something that I think the residents would like to know. Those are my questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Singh.
Yes, thank you, and thank you, Mr. Hummel. I think you have been definitely on top of this, and similar to Councillor Etherington, you are one of the better staffs to work with, so I thought I'd mention the same thing. A couple questions to the options that are here. So you mentioned it is a viable option, housing some of the equipment either at one of our garages or some at City Hall as well. Now, there is equipment that's housed at City Hall already, and I'm sure that needs to be cleaned and refueled as well. Where does that equipment get that done?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, most of the equipment that we do have at City Hall is in the winter months. It's in the loading bay area. And it's the same thing. There is some fuel there. They are transporting fuel from Victoria Park over versus us driving the equipment from City Hall over to fill and back because of the access and the closeness to the park.
So the facility to, I guess, store it, fuel, does that still exist at Brom? I know a lot of the infrastructure has been demolished there, But does that still exist? Because I know we still have a print shop there. We still run some operation out of there, don't we?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, my understanding is the building itself has been shut down, other than us using the snow melter on site. Through the winter months, we're hauling from downtown over to Brom Street. At this point, the rest of the buildings are off limits.
Okay. And the other aspects would still, even if you were to store the equipment elsewhere, for the winter months at least, because one of the options for summer to go from right up would be storage of salt, right? Could that be stored at Brom still? That wouldn't really require any capital costs, I'm guessing, for building, or would that still require that as well?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we're reusing a number of an old hoop building that we had at Chandler years ago. So for us to relocate it to a site that's not being used, such as an area at Brom that's not being used for parking, it'd just be a matter of the cost of us picking up the blocks and relocating it. But outside of that, there wouldn't be new purchases or any capital expenses.
Okay, so what I'm hearing from you is, for summer months we could operate out of Bridgeport, and in winter months we could possibly house the equipment either through one of our garages or City Hall as well. And for salt, we could have it at Brom also. So isn't that a solution then, and with limited cost?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I think there's certainly some solutions to the examples you've given. I think just to clarify, the 3 mowing routes, which is also 3 sidewalk plow routes that are coming out of Victoria Park, one goes from basically Cherry Park neighborhood down through Bridgeport. The other route runs through Belmont Village area, and the third route leaves Victoria Park and goes out to Victoria Hills. So the one machine that we would relocate to Bridgeport would continue to do that Bridgeport loop. That would make sense, and if we can find a way to make it work out of there in the winter time, by all means we will. And that's where we are looking at the other option, which is option 9, utilizing the garage part of Rockway versus to continue running out of Victoria Park. So we're looking at an opportunity to really start to look at the numbers. There's been some dialogue with the golf course to make certain of what they've got stored in their compound through the winter months, that we could have it relocated, moved around so that it would work for everyone.
Okay, so ultimately, a combination of these, I guess, options that are on the table, looking at it, finding the right mix of solution could still significantly reduce any capital costs. We could do it. Obviously, there would be some operational expenditure if we have different equipment and different sites. There would still be slight travel time, because even though it would be close to the downtown vicinity, but still there is some travel time that's added. But from what I'm hearing from you, we could definitively reduce the capital cost, though. Am I right?
Yes, that's correct.
Good, okay. Well, I look forward to hearing what Councillor Edlington has in mind, but I would hope that it encompasses that very last point.
Councillor Fernandez.
Thank you. A number of my questions have been asked by Councillor Singh. I just wanted 2 really quick ones. Mr. Hummel, do our operations staff work in sort of a zone situation, so that if you're park staff, you work in the park, if you're doing the Bridgeport area, that's sort of your zone, or do they move transferably from one area to another?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, both our grass cutting and our sidewalk plows are in routes that look after different zones. So they do cover an area, and we review those routes and zones yearly, both summer and in winter, to see if there's a better, more efficient, or if another opportunity arises that makes more sense.
Okay, and the reason I ask that is because if we're going to be locating it at City Hall or in the Bridgeport facility, that hopefully that would stay in that area, because that would make it more efficient, right?
That's correct.
The thought? Okay. The other question was, and I noticed that this was in option 1, instruct staff to drive equipment at reduced speeds and gear when traveling through the neighborhood to reduce the noise impacts. How are you going to be able to monitor that? I mean, by the time somebody lodges a complaint about that, that staff person is long gone. Is there some staff workshop or, governing that you're going to have to do about this?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it's, and I've had the continued discussion with the residents that, I'm glad they came forward and pointed out an obvious problem we were having in the park. And I think in the original report, we outlined the fact that, part of our collective agreement is staff are taking their breaks and lunch on site where they are. They're not to be driving back to the KOF or other facilities to sit and have their lunch. They're supposed to take it on site. So it became very apparent, and we heard loud and clear that we've got a problem down there. We had staff every chance to come back to that machine shop to sit down and have their lunch. So part of it is supervision. Part is the expectation of our lead hands that cannot happen anymore. They have to take it where they are. That's the efficiency of what we're doing. Part of the decisions of having this equipment at Victoria Park was because it was to be more efficient and effective. So if they're driving back and forth, that we lose any of our efficiency. So lead hand, supervisor will be spending time down there. And as explained to the residents, the reality is we have a progressive discipline system. Like, we only deal with it so often before you start to, day off without pay, and could lead to termination. And we're trying to impress upon staff that we're very aware it's a problem in the neighborhood and it's unacceptable.
Thank you for that. Just to reiterate, Councillor Singh talked about, and you identified that it looks like you could move the salt pile to Brown Street. And I had asked the resident if there was a time that she thought if we continued having the salt pile at the city, at the park, and the water truck fills up at that location as well. Is that correct?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the water truck, it used to be out of the park working 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. We've adjusted the shift so it starts out at the Cough with a full load of water. It goes right down to King Street at 5 o'clock in the morning. It takes about 2.5 to 3 hours to empty the truck on the plants on King Street. For years, we used the well that's over at the machine shop, 25, 30 years. The machine or the water truck would fill up there and then go back out and deal with beds, from beds in Victoria Park to beds on Queens Boulevard, to deal with annuals, perennials, et cetera, during the summer months. In discussion with the residents, we said we could certainly look. Our street sweepers now, our utilities division, sometimes you may have noticed them off a hydrant. It's a big metal box where the street sweepers hook up, fill up their machines with water. We said, by all means, we'll review the hydrants that are in and around the core, and if it makes sense and it's in the right location, we'll certainly go that route so the machine doesn't have to go to that well, they can go elsewhere.
Okay, great, thank you. It looks like you looked at some other alternatives I hadn't thought about. Thank you.
Gee, that was good. 5 seconds to go. Okay, Councillor Glenn Graham is the last speaker.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. And Mr. Hummel, it's just one question. It pertains to 2009 levels of the amounts of traffic and vehicles. And you don't have to provide this answer right now, but it would be beneficial, I think, if you're bringing back a more fulsome answer in April, to have something that approximates the number of trips that the residents may have experienced at that time. If that's our goal, it would be good to have a handle on it to understand what that might have looked at like. So if you could just put your mind to that, that I think would be beneficial for council. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to go to Councillor Etherington for a motion, and I don't know what it is, but I would, whatever it is or whatever amendments there may come forward with it, I would hope that we do not, around this council chamber tonight, try to resolve all of the details, because that is an administrative matter. We certainly want to give some guidance in some of the principles, but to start getting into which vehicle is going to go where, I think is beyond what this council should be doing. discussion. I would love the discussion to go on because I think it's good to have all of this information out there because it has been such a big issue before. But let's move this forward. Councillor Etherington.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, the first portion of my motion would be exactly what we have in the report. Under the first two paragraphs of the recommendations, that option 1, modified operations, as outlined in report INS 14016, be implemented as soon as possible to reduce, hopefully eliminate the noise impact on noise impact of non-Victoria Park related city operations functions on the Victoria Park neighbourhood, and that staff be, and I'm still with the recommendation, staff be directed to continue to monitor the traffic and impacts of implementation of the modified operations, and then I move into my suggestions, and that staff gives serious consideration to options 5, 9, and after consulting with Kitchener-Wilmot Hydro, option 10, as listed in report INS 14016, submitted to Council on January 27, 2014, and report back to Council as soon as possible. Also, that staff give consideration to the remaining content found in the document presented to us by residents titled Option 11, and that staff attempt to find alternate locations for salt and garbage debris piles currently located at Victoria Park Works Yard, and final paragraph, that staff solutions avoid an increase in capital costs.
Do you have that in writing?
I do, and I can pass it up.
Okay, because the
I'm sorry, I don't have...
Our procedural bylaw, as you know, is now to have to make a minor change is no problem, verbal, but anything major should be in writing and it should be distributed to all members of council.
Right.
It's too late. No. Is it readable? We can put it up on. We can put it on the overhead.
It's readable to me, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Well, I'm not sure that mine would be readable. That's why it wasn't any offense to you.
I'm sorry I didn't have copies. It's changed since I was working on it. So. No, I told you. They are numbered, though. No. Do you need me to read through them again, Mr.
No. But just, what's above that?
That is the recommendation before you from
so just
staff.
let's see all of that. That's correct.
Okay. I could have done it in shorthand.
Okay, so basically the first paragraph is consistent that we had in printing, and while you don't have it there, that staff be directed to continue to monitor. I'm looking at the printed report.
That's correct.
Not there, but you want to have that included as well?
Yes, please.
Okay. And then instead of number 2 that is printed, you are saying 5, 9, and 10, as you have stated.
Yep.
As soon as possible. Further down below, consideration be given
to the remaining content.
Yeah. Okay, and that's in their option 11. That's give you consideration to that. Number 4, that staff find alternate locations for the salt and garbage, and I think Mr. Hummel spoke to that.
Yeah.
And number 5, that staff solutions document and avoid.
No, I'm sorry, the document was above. That staff solutions avoid an increase in capital costs.
Right. Okay.
I think Councillor Singh had
That's
better
correct.
wording for that.
Okay. Is everyone clear on that? Is there a seconder for the motion? Councillor Verbanovich. Now, so far I've got 2 speakers on this, and I think it's pretty clear. And let's not go into a long discussion on it at this point in time, because this is direction to staff. We're not fixing the problem tonight. We're giving direction to staff to fix the problem. So with that, Councillor Urbanovich.
Thanks. Very briefly, Mr. Mayor, I think the neighborhood has been very patient and very gracious with us for the past number of months as we've been trying to find a resolution to this. And I know staff have been working hard to really try to come up with a solution that's going to work. I realize it takes some out-of-the-box thinking, but I think we're getting there, and I would hope that in this final step we can achieve that, so we can put this to rest once and for all. Because as one of the delegations said this evening, they don't particularly want to come back here, and I think it can probably be fairly said we'd like to see this get put to rest as well. Fundamentally, I think the motion really addresses 3 main things from my point of view. Number 1, that we need to get as close as possible to the pre-BRAM closure activity at this facility. In other words, less vehicles, less people, no salt, no fuel. Secondly, this needs to be as cost neutral as possible, both from a capital and, from my perspective, also an operating point of view. And finally, I think when we look at this, we need to look at this as if the whole operation of the City of Kitchener is one organization, and we need to break down any divisional or departmental silos that may be in the way, if that in fact is in the case, from trying to come up with a solution. And I think if we take that approach, the next time this comes to us should be the last time.
Councillor Ioannidis.
So just some clarification, we're no longer accepting friendly amendments.
Unless they are in detail, or rather, if there's substantive changes, no.
Okay, well, I think what I would like to see added to option 5 is that, and I think this is, in the grand scheme of things, I think this is what everyone is looking at, including staff, that we look at least the impact of any movement as the minimum cost of operations.
So you would like to have added a minimum increase in operational costs?
Yes.
Okay, that's not a substantive movement. That could be a friendly amendment. So it's when it substantially changes it, or it's a substantive change, we would not. But that, I think, it's already been suggested. Okay.
Otherwise, I think this is a pretty good solution that we have put forward here. I think the staff should be commendable in coming up with some of these options, and I think I also want to commend the residents in being diligent and looking out for their neighborhood. And I think overall this will be a great situation for everyone in the long run.
Councillor Glenn Graham.
Thank you very much. I will support this with that amendment. I was concerned that we're saying that we want a solution, but we're not willing to pay for it if it requires it, and I think we need to put our money where our mouth is here. So I know this has deeply affected the residents here, and I'm glad that they brought it forward for us to consider. And we do have to deal with this in terms of the worst case scenario in a winter like we're dealing with now, and certainly the impact to residents as if we were living there. That's the test. So I do think that we need more information. I'm glad we're doing something immediately, and I will support this.
Okay, Councillor Singh.
Yes, thank you. I think this motion acknowledges that there is a problem that does exist, and at the same time, it directs staff to appropriately manage their operations as they are the experts to be efficient and effective. That limits the impact to the Victoria Park residents. And where my concerns laid early on, I think it addresses to that point as well, that whatever solution is, that we also show responsibility to our taxpayers as well, and that costs be at a minimal effect to the taxpayer. And I think from the responses that Mr. Hummel gave, I think we can achieve that.
Councillor Galloway-Seelock.
Yeah, I just quickly wanted to say that I think we're on the right track for this, and I think the next time this comes forward, and I know we want it as soon as possible, but if we can get the report ourselves and also the residents a little bit sooner, even outside of our council package, so that we can try and avoid, the potential suggestions coming from us, during the meeting, so that we really can conclude this one the next time. I think it's really important because we've gone around a lot today, and I think a lot of these suggestions could have been given earlier than this evening, so that we potentially could have come into some solution quicker. So I just request that we try and take that route so that council and residents can have their input before we come to our next council meeting.
Okay, well said. Are there any other comments other than the mover? Okay, Councillor Ellington, close off the discussion. We will then vote.
I just wanted to say very quickly, Mr. Mayor, that to emphasize my appreciation to residents who get involved in these kinds of issues. I've watched them at numerous meetings giving up their own time, and I really admire that. I also admire their, in relation to what has been brought up here a few times, I also admire their dedication to avoiding the kind of financial costs that this could consider. And they've been very responsible in way of financial costs. So I hope we pass this motion.
Okay. Now put it to a vote. Those in recorded votes been called for. You're going to have to take off. Yeah, okay, that's good. Thank you. Oops. I think you have to take off the other system as well. Oh, no, but I'm looking at the yeah, you got to get the motion. I've voted, but I'm now voted, but I'm saying before you put it up, when I click back and forth, it's the motion keeps coming up there. You will not be. All right. Thank you. Okay, those in favor? That's carried unanimously. Actually, perhaps in a unanimous vote, we wouldn't even have to stand except for the exercise. Okay. Thank you very much. We will hopefully come to a conclusion quickly. The tenders are next. Councillor Galloway-Seelock is moving the tenders. Is there a seconder? Councillor Ioannidis. We'll just go through them one by one very quickly. The sign blanks, questions, toner cartridges, just so we don't jump around. Gas and water infrastructure locates. Councillor Gazzola.
I just wanted to ask on this, is this the way this has always been handled? Has the utility operation had to cover the cost of this?
Who can answer
The customer never has to worry about this?
Ms. Houston?
That's correct. It's never been the customer responsibility.
Now, have we always outsourced this work?
It's a combination of in-house staff and we use contract staff to deal with the peaks. And
So is that still the case?
Yes.
Okay, that's what I was more concerned with. Thank you.
Councillor Fernandez?
Sorry,
Same one?
no, I apologize. I just wanted to clarification on the previous one about the
Hang on a
toner.
second. Are there any other questions on the infrastructure gas locates? Okay, so we'll go back to which one?
Sorry, just the previous one,
Toner.
number 2. Yes. Does this include shipping charges? Because I noticed that it's coming from Ottawa, does the price include any shipping charges?
Mr. Gordon?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, it covers the landed end cost of the product.
Great, thank you.
Cold beverages? Whoa. Y'all want to have a pop here, do you? Councillor Davey.
Thank you, Mayor Zaire. Just a question with respect to timing. We're looking at sponsorship in the future. I think this is one of the areas where we really need to focus on that. So I have some concern with the additional 5-year term because it seems to me that our sponsorship strategy will be right in its full swing in definitely about 3 or 4 or 5 years, which I wouldn't want to see us locked into a long-term contract. So my question is, number one, is it wise to have this second 5-year option? And number two, is it imperative that that be included in the tender?
And perhaps as an addendum to that, it's at whose option? Is it at our option or at the
yes,
the company's option?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, it is that second 5-year is at our option.
Oh, that's fine then.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. On that same subject, Councillor Galloway-Sealock.
Yeah, my question's just with regard to the decrease percentage on page number 2 from previous agreements. Do we have any indication why that may be happening?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, no, we haven't had any discussion with them about why that is different.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. May, do you are on that, or Ms. Houston? Okay. Got two.
Through you, Mr. Chair, perhaps I can just add, we certainly haven't had discussions with the proponents, but this is not surprising. We have seen over the past several years a reduction in the amount of beverages that are being consumed at these facilities, and so it would seem appropriate that the dollar figure would also be reduced.
Mr. Regier, your button is on. Are you?
I apologize for that.
Okay. All right. Councillor Yanetsky on this same item.
Yeah, I'm just wondering that since there are only 2 bidders, how come we don't have any bid prices shown for both of them? Through you, Mr. Mayor, Coca-Cola decided that in their bid that they were, or in their submission, that they were not prepared to go forward with the sponsorship funding. So they declined? Yes. Okay.
Okay. Next one is the consultant services for Delisle Avenue. Councillor Fernandez.
I don't have a question. I just want to thank staff. I had asked a number of questions, and both Mr. Gordon and Mr. Allen were pretty clear. One of the things that I had asked, I'll just bring it forward, is that consultant services in this case have a 10% built-in contingency. I had also asked about sidewalks on this, a number of public meetings, and the protection of the trees, because I know there are some mature trees. So they've all been addressed, and I just want to thank staff for doing that in advance.
And that's it. Those in favor of the tenders? Opposed? That's carried. Okay. Okay, we will now go to the committee reports. And I'll remind you of the new procedure that the report, other than those that we are bringing forward separately, are given as treated as consent items. So no need to read them. It's just the balance of the report. We have dealt with number 5 under community services. Councillor Ioannidis.
Yes, moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Etherington that the report of the Community Infrastructure Service Committee be adopted, items number 1, 2, 3, 4, and 6.
Okay. Any discussion on any item? Those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Councillor Davey, the Finance and Corporate Services Committee.
Thank you, Mayor Zaire. It's been moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Paul Singh that the 4 items on the Finance and Corporate Services Committee be approved.
Any questions? Those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Councillor Vrbanovich, the Planning and Strategic Initiatives Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's been moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Kelly Galloway Seelock that the report of the Planning and Strategic Initiatives Committee be adopted, items number 1 and 2.
Those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Someone bring forward the Audit Committee report. Councillor Davey, seconded by Councillor Galloway Seelock. Those in favor? Sorry. Opposed? That's carried. There's still one item on Heritage Committee. Councillor Etherington, you're moving that? Councillor Etherington, you're moving that? Yes. Seconded by? Councillor Vrbanovich. Councillor Unetsky on that item?
Yeah, question. In regard to the third property at 3143 Cedar Street, is that Cedar Street north or south?
I don't know that staff, our heritage staff is no longer here. I think I had taken a look at that for some reason. I believe that one is north. Yeah.
So it should be north added, just for...
Yes. I think it is north, but that should be clarified.
It's north.
Okay. Those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Any new business? Questions, answers? Councillor Galloway Seelock.
Yeah, I just want to bring to the attention, I had a conversation with the principal at Jean Steckley Public School today, and I think it's really important that we look at having a crossing guard out in front of Seabrook and Woodbine, Woodbine Street, because it is a disaster out there in the morning. So if we can have staff look at into that immediately and see if we can get any solutions in the short term, that would be great. And if any report needs to come to council, that do happen in the very near future.
The usual process for a request like that is taken up by Ms. Houston's division. You wish to speak to that, Ms. Houston?
I'm just wondering if we should have a council motion to reflect that.
Actually, that would fall into that category. So it is moved by Councillor Galloway Seelock, seconded by Councillor Ioannidis, that requests staff to review the crossing guard situation at which school? Jean Steckley Public School. Those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Thank you for catching me on that. Councillor Vrbanovich.
Thanks. Question for Mr. Chapman, and just has to do with committee agendas. I noticed in attending the Compass Kitchener meeting that I couldn't find their agenda and supporting materials on our council website. And then I started looking some more, and I found that there were other advisory committees that weren't on the council website. And so that surprised me, and I'm wondering if I can find out, is that regular practice? And if so, what would it take for us to get that changed? Because I think, as we look at transparency and accountability and so on, it's important that our advisory committees, because they are public meetings, are also showing up on the council website.
Mr. Chapman.
Through you, Mayor Zaire, you are correct, Councillor Vrbanovich. The practice has not been consistent in the past, but it is our desire to have all advisory committees' agendas and minutes posted to the website, so I can confirm that the staff that administer those committees are working with clerk staff right now to put that process into place.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Okay. It's therefore been moved by Councillor Galloway-Seelock, seconded by Councillor Singh, that the bylaws be given first reading. But there is a late starter. Is that right, Madam Clerk?
Yes, there are two late starter items, both part lot control exemptions, one for Maitland Street and one for Huron Road.
Those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. And it's been moved by Councillor Ioannidis that Council resolve itself into Committee of the Whole. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Councillor Ioannidis, as Chair of the Committee of the Whole. Well, they are. They are.
Okay. Seconded by Councillor Kelly Galloway-Seelock. Do we have any questions on the bylaws? Reading of the second of the bylaws. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Dealing with the administrative reports. Mayor Zaire, should I just read these as just items one, or should I be reading these out further?
Well, this is the one that I think Councillor Elthington was asking about. So it should reference it. I think that would be the best way to
just do a quick reference. Okay. Do we have each one individually? Okay. For the tenders, item number one with the regional water loop.
No, we've dealt with all of
that.
those.
Oh yeah, we did do the tender. Sorry. I guess the item number two, master plan and charitable receipts with the statue project, a celebration of leadership.
I will move that.
You'll move that.
But then.
Yeah, I have a couple of questions to staff on this issue. And then I had some comments before we vote on it. So my question to staff through you, Councillor Ioannidis. First question, I wondered why we are going ahead so fast. The word I used was stampeding ahead on this before we consider public opinion results of the survey we set up to receive and consider public opinion on the statue project. Now, I'm told that those results will be in February the 7th. But in the meantime, we have, as we all know, in the Mayor's office, we have hot topic responses. And my understanding on the statue project is we've had 41 responses, with 40 people saying no to the project and only one supporting it. Only one supporting a project that looks like it would cost us $300,000. So that was my first question to staff. Why don't we wait until February the 7th or some later date so we can look at public opinion?
Ms. Houston?
I guess there's a couple of parts there. My understanding, based on the last response I got from communications staff, was that we had over 1,700 responses to our website survey. So I'm thinking the number that you have, Councillor Etherington, is phone calls into the Mayor's office as opposed to the actual web survey.
Correct.
In terms of your question as to why we wouldn't wait until the public survey is in, you may recall that there's more than one piece to the consultation. The web survey was something that Council added when the report was presented. In addition, there's the consultation with the Heritage Kitchener, the Public Art Working Group, the Victoria Park Neighborhood Group. And those groups require us to do a detailed design in order for them to comment upon it. So the idea was that we would bring back the public survey and the consultation information from those groups, along with a recommendation on a staff report in March, which is what the resolution of council approved. So that was the approach that we've been taking.
The this master plan is going to cost $30,000. We don't pay for that. The people promoting the idea will pay for it. I understand that, but I still don't know why we would put them, why we would have them spend that money on a plan and endorse that plan at this meeting, and endorse the fact we would provide income tax credits for potential donors. It feels like we're putting the cart before the horse and, in a way, misleading these people into believing that we totally support this project. And I have a feeling, I don't know, that those 1,700 responses will reflect exactly what we're receiving through the mayor's office. I wonder if staff could comment on that.
Well, Mr. May, did you wanted to clarify? I thought I saw your hand put up. Okay. Go ahead, Ms. Houston.
I can't comment on the responses to the web survey, but I would be concerned if we were to halt the master plan process at this point in time. You would not be in a position to make a decision on this project for quite some time, because first you would have to consider the website survey results, and then we would have to start the consultation with the Heritage Kitchener, POG, and Victoria Park Working Group, creating a master plan. That will put us back a number of months as well. I know the proponents were concerned about the time that it's going to be taking once this project is approved to commission the artists and proceed with the commissioning and actual manufacture of the statues to get the project in time for 2017. Seems like a long time, but it's a long process to go through as well.
Mr. Mayor, I have some comments to make. I don't know at what point you... I'm sorry, Chair Ioannidis. When do you want me to make those comments?
You can make them briefly, please.
Who's watching the board?
I am, but he's got the floor.
I'm the chair of the committee of the whole.
So my comments, I think it's time that councillors publicly declared support or opposition for what I believe to be a well-meaning but questionable project. I respect the intent and impressive fundraising activities of organisers and supporters, but based on my conversation with Ward 9 residents and survey responses to the Mayor's office, granted, they're not comprehensive, I'm convinced that an overwhelming majority of taxpayers do not want these statues erected in a public heritage park that they, by the way, own the park. The negative public reaction has been reinforced by that opposition to the statues, and I intend to vote against this and any future statue plans or recommendations. While I appreciate the fact donations will cover the $30,000 cost of this master plan, but I really don't want to endorse a project when we could find better ways to spend that $300,000. As far as I'm concerned, we're misleading, as I've said, misleading the project organizers by endorsing this. I don't support this type of, and that's my opinion, this type of US-style glorification of prime ministers who are not directly elected by voters, and I believe if we want to build statues, we can easily find more worthy Canadian and local subjects. I'm a great supporter, Mr. Chair, of public art, even controversial public art, but part of the reason I find this project distasteful is the fact that I'm not at all proud of the historic actions of some of our former prime ministers. To mention a few, those actions include residential schools, Japanese internment, rejection of Jewish refugees fleeing potential slaughter. So I would urge councillors to, at the very least, stall this recommendation or reject this recommendation until we can review that overall public response to our online survey. Thanks for your time.
Mayor Zaire, do we have Councillor Gazzola?
Yeah, I had a number of questions, but Councillor Etherington's already asked them. So I'll make some comments. I would like to...
Proceed.
Yeah, thank you. No, as far as I'm concerned, this is premature at this point. I don't know how we can be approving a master plan on something when we're not going to really make a decision until March of this year. This was never discussed before that we were going to have to do this in January. I don't share all of Councillor Etherington's opinions on this, but I do think that we should wait until we have our discussion on it before we go out and order a master plan to be prepared. Because I think it does, once you go down this path, I think it does become a little more difficult to do a flop later on. So the question is fine, as far as I'm concerned, to come back to us in March after we've had our discussion that we asked for public engagement. We're always asking for public engagement, and it appears that we've gotten very good public engagement on this, and now we seem to be reacting before we've had an opportunity to sit down and look at what the public have said and to then be able to make a decision as to what direction we're going. So I think this is, I won't get into the merits of the project. I think that's another whole issue, but I think this aspect of it is totally premature. So I won't be supporting this at this time. I would, if you'd consider a deferral until after the points have been discussed in March, and I would put forward a deferral.
Okay, you put forward a deferral, then let's vote on the deferral. Or do we have any comments on the deferral?
If I may just interject, and you can, as chair, you can take that, but quite often there is a lineup of 2, 4, 5 people.
Okay.
Speak, and we often
Okay, we'll
deferral
hold off
until-
on the deferral, because actually I do have a couple questions myself, so I don't know who's else on the board, if you can direct me on that.
Okay, they are Councillors Davey, Singh, Fernandez, Yunetsky, Glenn Graham, Verbanovich, and myself.
Davey, Singh, Urbanovich. You can remind me after
I
we
will.
get past Barry.
So it's Councillor Davey.
Okay. Councillor Davey, go ahead.
Thank you. And I'll just be brief because I think deferral's in order, so I'll just make a quick comment instead, especially in light of the lineup of people that want to speak. So the recommendation does concern me because it's only 2 lines and it says that council, I was actually prepared to bring forward an alternate recommendation because it clearly says that council endorse, which I think is inappropriate at this time until we get public feedback, and it also says as a city-supported initiative. I think a deferral is definitely appropriate because I'm not really sure. I get the same sense as Councillor Etherington that politicians might not be the right way to go. Are the people behind this project, when they do the master plan, are they interested only in that? Does it die with the leaders of Canada? Are they interested in replacing it with some other statues that people might be interested in, be it famous Canadian scientists, etc.? But I do think that it is definitely inappropriate to have council endorse in a city-supported initiative in the recommendation in the vacuum of public input at this time.
Okay. I just want one bit of clarification. As the list here, are there any questions to staff?
Yes.
Okay, because I want to have questions first with your comments, but if there was no questions, then I was going to prepare to make mine. So we'll have Councillor Singh next.
So one quick question, but then I'll make my comment thereafter.
Okay.
So the question is the timing of this. Ms. Houston, you've explained that some of the groups stakeholders that we're going to require a master plan before they provide input, but what's the rush? The delegation that came before us that brought this idea forward said themselves that this would be something that would probably, later part of 2015. So what's the urgency? Why not? Why can't we allow the public input process to take place, hear from the public as a whole, our taxpayers, And then if the overwhelming majority do agree with this, are in support of this, and then carry on forward with the further public input being, Victoria Park Working Group and Heritage and so on. Why are we jumping the gun on this one?
Ms. Houston?
It will impact your overall approval timeline. I would suggest your approval will be much later than the March and June that was originally laid out in the report. So you'd probably be looking at the fall before you'd be approving anything, because of the time that it's going to take after that next step to still get the master plan done. I'd also like to point out at Council, when you did pass a resolution, you asked for the next report to include the detailed project plan to come back in March. So,
we did, but I don't think we any of us expected here to be a full-fledged master plan with a price tag of $30,000 as well. And I don't blame staff on this. I'm just wondering what's the rationale. Are we being encouraged by the group that's supporting this and spearheading this project? Is there a certain timeline that they're trying to push for? And that's not the case. Correct?
well, they have indicated that it's going to take some time to commission these statues as well, and the time is ticking on. So if we're deferred till this fall to approve a project, that will have an impact on them, I'm sure.
Okay, thank you. And I think that was helpful for us to hear why the rationale for this report to come forward, because the blame shouldn't just drop on staff's lap. But nonetheless, I'll make my comments now. I can't be supportive of this report. I think just because the monies that are being received are not from our taxpayers, we still owe a level of responsibility to the donors. And if it's apparent, and to me it's my presumption that I think a majority of our residents are not supportive of this type of a cost for this type of a project. And that's what I've been hearing from my residents, and that's what I've heard through the input that's received through mayor and council office thus far. So by proving this $30,000, we're ultimately spending someone's money while we're leading to saying we're not going to do this, and that's irresponsible. And I can't support that type of irresponsibility of spending someone else's money, similar to the way I would be respectful and cautious of our taxpayers' money. So I can't support this.
Okay. Councillor Fernandez.
Thank you. Can you give me a sense of how much staff time has been spent on this so far in terms of any conversations, working towards a master plan? What kind of hours are we looking at, roughly?
I would have to get back to you on that. I wouldn't even be able to try to estimate that at this point.
Okay. So would it be a number of staff people that have been working on this, or just yourself?
It would mostly be myself and a staff member from Heritage, from Arts and Culture, and from Parks to provide some input for the master plan.
Okay, so in essence, it is costing taxpayer dollars to move this project forward as we go forward. What would happen if this group that says they're going to fund the statues was not able to come up with the complete amount? Has there been any discussion with these people who have presented this project about if they can't come up with that funding?
Which funding are you talking about?
The funding to do the statues.
That would be a decision of council at that point in time when you approve the project. You would be setting a target for the fundraising to be achieved before you would allow the project to proceed.
Okay. So they're willing to earmark $30,000 out of the money that they've already funded for this master plan?
That's correct.
Okay. Those are my questions. My comments are that it's a little bit similar to what Councillor Etherington said when he said the cart before the horse. I've heard as well from just about every person who has emailed me or left me a phone message, except for one, saying that they were not in support of this project. I think we are clearly hearing what the public is saying. I think we really need to defer any movement on this until we have a complete report about what the public responses are from the survey. I wouldn't want to spend $1 of anybody's money, whether it's donated money or taxpayers' money, to move any further on this until we know exactly where the public stands on this. Because in the end, whether it's donated money from those people who are pulling it out of their pockets, they have to continue to pay taxes, and it becomes their dollar all around. And then it becomes the rest of our responsibility to maintain the statues, to maintain the area around the statues, and maintain how it fits into the park. So I certainly do support a deferral until we hear a complete report.
Councillor Yaneski.
I don't have any questions, just comments.
Go right ahead.
Okay, I'm not prepared to support this. I was surprised to see this here before us. I think it's totally premature. We haven't made a decision on it. They're already trying to collect funds for a master plan and receipts. And I think it's totally misleading to the public. A lot of the comments have been made by my colleagues here. And I'm not prepared to support this, but if it's going to be deferral to consider it as part of the review when it comes back in a couple of months, I'm prepared to support the deferral.
Okay. Councillor Dan Gungraham, sorry.
Sorry.
So what's that? Okay.
This is a case where we're sending the wrong signal to the public. We talk a lot about the need for public engagement, and we've gone through an exercise where we've asked for the public's input. It would be absolutely the wrong time to say we're cutting that short in any way that the public would perceive that we're making up our minds or sending a signal that we're halfway home towards the statue project. We need to be open-minded about what the results will be of this survey, and we have to consider that. So I would encourage us not to make up our minds about this yet, regardless of the numbers of emails we've been getting. But what we have to do is to respect and value the input of the citizens that have taken the time to talk to us. And that means getting the report in front of us and then making up our minds about the next steps. So I can't support this current master plan recommendation.
Councillor Verbanovich.
Thanks. I will be supporting the deferral. I think a lot of what needed to be said has been said. I think there is a little bit of a difference of where we're going now than the direction we gave to staff previously. So I think it was appropriate for staff to bring this back in light of that direction around a detailed project plan. However, it is an issue that has garnered significant community input. I can't remember the last time we heard from 1,700 people on an issue. So I, for one, am very open and anxious to hear what those results will be, and when that occurs, I think we'll deal with this issue and all parts of the project at that time.
Councillor Kelly Galloway Seelock.
Yeah, I just have one quick question of staff. What would happen if, because it clearly says here that if the funding is raised to cover the full cost, what would happen if we gave out tax receipts to the donors and the master plan didn't go forward because they didn't raise the funds? Would the money presumably would go back to the people who had donated it, but what happens with the tax receipt portion of that?
Mr. Chapman.
Through you, Chair. My understanding in this case is that the donors have basically pledged that full amount, so our expectation is that if Council were to approve this motion, they would supply us with that full funding, so that the scenario you've raised would not be a possibility in this case.
Okay.
She's going to still continue.
Yeah, that was my question. I just want to make a couple comments. I think it's been interesting to listen to the comments here, and I think we need to bring it back. I have no problem waiting until we hear from the public. And as Councillor Hetherington said, that we should publicly declare our opinion today. Well, I can't do that because I haven't heard from over 1,700 people who have completed a survey. So I'm not willing to put any of my opinions on the table. And well, like the rest of you, other than that survey and what's coming into the office of the Mayor and Council, I don't believe I've really heard from anybody from the public. So I don't know if they're just missing my email or contact information, but it hasn't been a hot button issue for me out in Ward 5 anyways. But I think we have to be careful because we've instructed staff to continue to take the request of the public forward, and by bringing this, they're just trying to be proactive in helping to assist in a project that could potentially happen. And I think the people who are donating the money towards the master plan know that there's a risk involved in putting that money forward and doing that master plan, that it may not happen. And if they're fully aware of that and they have the funds and the passion to do that, I think we should allow them to do that. But I do agree that at the end of the day, we need to wait to hear from the public before we proceed any. So I commend staff for continuing to try to move this forward after getting Council's direction to continue to proceed, especially with the public consultation. And I look forward to hearing from the rest of the from public who are interested in March.
Mayor Zare.
Thank you. This actually is the direction that Council gave. It may not have been fully understood, but it is the direction that we gave as part of the process. The implications of the timing, as I say, may not have been understood, but so I don't think that there's any fault in staff coming forward with it. There was a detailed timeline that was laid out earlier on. What disappoints me about tonight is not necessarily the deferral, but that with all of the talk that all of us give from time to time, and the soapbox we stand on about public engagement, and that we shouldn't be making decisions before we have public engagement, are prejudging the outcome. It may very well end up with a majority of the public through the engagement saying no. We still have to make a decision. It wouldn't be the first time that we vote, even if there was a majority who said yes, and we decide no, it's not in the best interests, or vice versa. So public engagement is one component of it, and as I say, what disappoints me tonight is the prejudging and talking about the issues of a particular prime minister or whatever. There are other issues that would be more worthy, I think, of a discussion. The answer to the question that was asked earlier on about the entire project, I think it came from Councillor Fernandez. What happens if the money isn't forthcoming in the larger amount? It's very simple. It simply doesn't proceed because the commission doesn't go ahead without the money in the bank. So that was never an issue. Raising the money may be an issue, but whether or not it was going to be going ahead without the money, the answer was no. And I had made it very clear to the proponents earlier on that do not expect Council to pick up any shortfall in the commission that would be going out. I can understand the reluctance because not certain as to where this will fall, and so perhaps the deferral is the way to go this evening. It will obviously delay the process because we'll probably have to come back again because we won't have all of the information on which to make a decision in March when the results from the survey are known. So the intent was to have all of that information so that one decision could be made. And in that sense, we're shortchanging the process, which we had agreed to earlier on. So there's another comment.
Yeah, myself.
And Councillor.
Yeah, and then let them bring over the deferral. Yeah, a lot of my comments were probably mentioned in the questions that were answered by staff, because I really think this was just put forward because of what our recommendation was, but I think it is the responsibility of these individuals, and they're the ones that are taking the risk, and I think they were just looking at getting some kind of a tax initiative in there for it, because they're looking at doing something good for the community. So I don't think it's jumping the gun. So, but I think it would be best for us to look at all of the public input, because as Mayor Zaire has mentioned, that's preached around this chamber quite a bit, and so when this is not in the process that we're doing right now, I think it's ill justice on the part of the residents, because I know myself, I've heard maybe one comment from my residents, so I want to hear what the rest of the residents have to say. And with that, Councillor Gazzola, with your deferral recommendation.
I'm going to move a deferral, but I would like to take an opportunity to say two things. If we could, no one is blaming staff. Staff have done what they're supposed to do. The buck stops with council. So the council's doing what they should be doing. The second point, some members of council clearly have indicated a position, but I think most members of council have said they want to wait and hear what the public are saying. So I don't think we're throwing public engagement aside. What we're saying is it's premature. So on that basis, I would move for a deferral. I guess I would have to ask staff if it's something that we can deal with on the day that we actually deal with the report. I think it is, because I think once we deal with the report, there will be a clear indication of where we're going, and at that point, this would naturally follow where we're going. So I will move a deferral until the day, when that other report is brought back by staff.
Okay, can we get a clarification on that date, Ms. Houston?
Just looking at the agenda calendar, the survey closes on February the 7th, so the next committee meeting after that would be the 24th.
Okay, so would the 24th be acceptable to you, Councillor Gazzola?
It's acceptable to me, and I hope it is to everyone else.
Do we have a seconder for the deferral? You don't need it. Okay. Committee, sorry. Okay. With all that, okay.
Just for clarification, the 24th is a committee day. That's what you're referring to.
Okay. Okay. We will now take a vote. All those in favor of the deferral? Opposed? Carried. It looked like it was unanimous. I didn't see Councillor Etherington's hand. Okay, unanimous. Next item up on the agenda is item number 3, Tag Day request. Move that by Councillor Galloway Seelock. Any questions? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Item number 4, Committee of Adjustment, moved by Councillor Glenn Graham. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Clerk, do we have any other items? No. Okay. With that the proceedings and the recorded pecuniary interest and conflicts taken in the meeting of the Committee of the Whole held this date as attached hereunto and forming part of these minutes are hereby adopted and confirmed, which has been moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Etherington. All those
in favor? Opposed? That's carried. And it's been moved by Councillor Galloway Seelock and seconded by Councillor Singh that the bylaws be given third reading. Those in favor? And before I call for a adjournment, I want to thank you for cooperation in terms of the going through our new rules of procedure. And I don't think there were any. There was one that might have gone over by a few seconds in terms of the time. So we all stuck with it, and I appreciate that. Thank you very much. So it's been moved by Councillor Fernandez that we adjourn.